Hi guys, welcome back to the channel today. We're diving behind the silk curtains of the Ottoman Harem, marching alongside fearless warrior queens from Africa to Europe, and sitting beside Marcus Aurelius as he pens his Stoic meditations amid plague and war. If you love vivid snapshots of history that reveal the grit beneath the glamour smash, that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. I'd love to hear your voice drop a comment, telling me which historical woman or ruler from tonight's story inspires you the most and why. Let's begin right now. As promised when we cracked open Topkapa's bronze gates, let's slip fully inside. Beyond marble lions and silent eunuchs lies the harem, a sealed cosmos where silk dazzles, perfume suffocates, and a heartbeat can sound like treason. Point 1 follows one concubine through a single Ottoman day, revealing how splendor and dread twine like golden threads around a throat. Dawn breaks before sunlight. In the communal dormitory, nearly 200 women surface from sleep like pearls lifted from dark water, beautiful, priceless, and instantly measured. Brass lamps sputter. Their smoke drapes quilts sewn with tulips and verses. Every woman from the newest Yeni Carrier to the seasoned Iqbal shares the same first goal: survive the morning roll call. Satin may shield skin, but vigilance shields status. Layla, 16, counts the droplets in a water clock while whispering a prayer. Selected on the Black Sea coast. For storm gray eyes, she has spent 8 months learning to bow without wobbling and to smile without revealing strategy. She steps onto chill marble and follows lantern-bearing servants toward the hammam. The bath is an empire of steam. Marble lions pour water into basins wide enough to drown gossip. Nakedness briefly levels rank, yet bravado reinstates it within minutes. Compliments coded as barbs float through the haze. You glow brighter than the lantern's means. Remember me when fortune tilts. Layla offers only measured nods. Information is the single currency unaffected by inflation. Scrubbed raw, the women retreat to niches no larger than confessionals. Kohl darkens eyes, pomegranate rouge stains. Cheeks rosewater slicks wrists. Layla's cosmetics chest is a lacquered wonder, but her hands quiver. One uneven line could signal sloth or arrogance. She slides into an emerald silk caftan, knots a silver thread belt, and rehearses serenity. Roll call meets in the marble hall. Chief Eunuch Hassan, tall as a cypress, intones each honorific with surgical precision. After each name blooms a tea light of silence, demanding flawless response. When he pronounces Layla bint Selim, her present honored Aasu balances humility with whispered ambition. A pause, half a breath too long, chills her spine. Then Hassan turns the page. Relief tastes like sherbet. Breakfast arrives on lacquer trays: figs, honey cakes, pistachios, cardamom milk. Eating is theater. One must seem grateful, not hungry. Layla takes 2 figs, one for herself, one for Mary, senior companion to the Valide Sultan. Mary's thin smile grants a fractional blessing. In a palace trading rumor, faster than coin fractions accumulate. Late morning lessons rival any madrasa Quranic recitation. Persian couplets should practice chess openings, inheritance law. Layla favors calligraphy. The reed pen's fluid curve offers fragile autonomy, but today she charts dynastic land grants. Geography is a map. Power is the legend scribbled in margins. At noon, the muezzin's call blankets the compound with staged calm. Women recline on terraces, eyes half-lidded, yet ears tilted for the silver jingle that precedes an imperial summons. Should Sultan Selim request a promenade partner, her fortune will spike like quicksilver. The unchosen must swallow envy with poise. Today, the jingle glides past Layla's veranda. Disappointment and relief rope together. She diffuses tension through embroidery. Each tulip, stitched into ivory satin, hides a secret fifth petal, a private rebellion against uniformity. Nearby rivals debate oud tempos in voices like padded daggers. Conflict rarely explodes. It seeps into wardrobe assignments and seating hierarchies. A frayed hem can exile you to laundry. A timed compliment might unlock the library. Sunset ignites glass lamps, turning corridors into rivers of amber. Dinner gleams quint-stewed lamb saffron rice dotted with barberries. Ney flutes drift across lattice screens. Some concubines dance limbs liquid, rehearsing for unseen judges. Others gamble with ivory dice, wagering hairpins poems, small loyalties. Layla lingers at the edge, calibrating the cost of joining versus the safety of watching. When the crimson shawl appears on its ivory stand, breath halts. The shawl is prophecy. Whoever's name follows will share the Sultan's night and perhaps his lineage. Tonight, the steward selects Gulbahar, a woman who rendered invisibility into influence. Layla feels the sting of omission, yet savors one more night alive. She bows, dissolving into sandalwood shadows. Curfew dims the world. In the dormitory, whispers cling like incense to curtains. Layla writes a line of verse. Silk binds softer than iron, yet scars the same folds it into her pillow and courts uneasy sleep, while palace drums mark the wolf hour. Beyond the thick walls, the Bosphorus churns indifferent to human stakes. At midday, a muted bell rings. Yet before anyone moves, scribes arrive with bamboo cases of fresh parchment. Each woman receives a square and must compose a haiku-like couplet praising the dynasty. The exercise is judged anonymously by the Valid Sultan, who rewards wit over flattery. Layla dips her reed in ink, the hue of midnight figs, and writes, "Moonlit Bosphorus mirrors my heart, loyal yet restless." The room fills with the scratch of reeds and breathing. Some women quote Rumi, others imitate previous winners. Layla leaves a smudge gambling imperfection will be read as vulnerability, not conceit. Afternoon recreation unfolds beneath cypress shadows. While gardeners prune lemon trees, concubines play tablet on inlaid boards, each piece mother of pearl or ebony. Layla partners with Zainab, whose command of 5 languages conceals an iron will. Every captured piece becomes a question about family origins. Every escape move a withheld answer. After conceding the board, Layla walks away richer in information. A Portuguese envoy has gifted the Sultan a clockwork bird, whose jeweled songbox opens tomorrow, and attendance will be limited to 10 favored women. A rumor already bait for schemers and eager courtiers. Thus ends one revolution of the palace clock. Inside the Ottoman Harem, scholarship blooms beside rivalry, and luxury masks a spinning blade. At first light, the incense bell will toll, 200 contenders will rise, and Layla will re-enter the arena, where diamonds form through pressure and shatter with a single slip. Whether she ascends into glittering memory or fades into unrecorded servitude, hinges on choices no wider than a silk thread, and on luck no historian can footnote. The dormitory is still dark, but darkness in the harem is never empty. It is stocked with quiet calculations, who borrowed whose sandalwood comb, who whispered too loudly. After curfew, who woke whimpering from a nightmare, and therefore showed weakness. Layla, schooled to listen, before she moves gauges the mood by breath alone. Shallow breaths mean tension. Deep, even breaths signal confidence. This morning the air is staccato. Someone has been promoted overnight. She can taste hope and envy mingling like cardamom and clove. She slips from her cotton pallet without letting the wooden planks creak. Every gesture is an audition. Should the chief eunuch later recall that Layla rose with the grace of a cat, the phrase may travel to the Valide Sultan's ears, and from there to the Sultan's. The distance between a compliment and a command performance in the imperial chambers is sometimes no more than 3 anecdotes. The first ritual is water. Not the lavish cascade of the hammam that comes later, but a silent cupping from a copper basin at her bedside. The water is flavored with basil, believed to keep the skin cool under silk, and the mind cooler under pressure. Layla lets it sluice over her wrists, then pats her face, leaving tiny rivulets designed to simulate dewy youth. A younger girl, Fariha, has already overdone the trick droplets cling to her chin like nervous sweat. Layla makes a note. A woman who cannot portion water may soon misportion secrets. Light arrives next, wheeled in by 2 junior attendants carrying camphor lamps. The flame's first kiss exposes every imperfection, a stray hair, a blemish, the unpicked seam of a sleeve. Natural perfection is a palace joke. The correct face is built with discipline and powders. Layla opens her lacquered cosmetics box. Inside pigments lie arrayed like soldiers, crushed pearls for highlights, kohl for lashes, a minute jar of cinnabar for lips. Cinnabar is mercury sulfide poison, basically, but a concubine's body is an expendable canvas if the color turns heads. While blending the pearl dust with rosewater, Layla sees her reflection in the box's polished lid. She does not allow herself the luxury of self-praise. Vanity drains focus. Instead, she pictures the audience Chief Eunuch Hassan, whose hawk-bright eyes miss nothing. Mary, the Valide's confidant, whose approving nod can catapult a girl toward favor, and the Sultan himself, whose gaze is rumored to linger on gray-eyed women exactly 3 seconds longer than on brown-eyed ones. Layla times 3 slow blinks and memorizes the rhythm. Garments matter almost as much as faces. The palace issues color guidelines each season. Spring favors emeralds and saffrons. Winter prefers garnets and midnight blues, but within those limits, every thread communicates allegiance. Layla chooses an emerald caftan, appliqued with silver tulips. Tulips are the Sultan's favorite flower, yet the silver thread keeps the blossoms subtle. Ostentation too early in one's career can trigger collective retaliation. She fastens the caftan with a braided sash and hides a single sprig of lavender in the knot. Should any rival lean close enough to inhale, they will smell calm, or more dangerously. Fear misread as calm. Across the room, Nadira, the harpist, fumbles with her sash. A knot refuses to tighten. The silk crumples like wounded pride. Layla crosses over, reties the bow in one elegant loop, and murmurs, "The crescent faces right, not left." The correction is both favor and warning. Nadira flushes gratitude. Later, when musicians gossip in the practice hall, Nadira will remember that Layla saved her from sartorial disgrace. Debts in the harem accrue interest. A bell chimes once high, metallic, undeniable. It is the summons to the hammam. The bath is more than hygiene. It is inspection in vapor. Layla files into the corridor lined with Islamic tiles, their cobalt vines curling like rumors. Damp heat greets her skin, loosening muscles even as her nerves tighten. Here, nakedness is a weapon. Scars, dimples, and posture are noted by the elder attendants who will carry reports back to Hassan. A concubine with bruised ankles may be unfit for a dance commission. One with flawless shoulders could be chosen to pour sherbet at court banquets. Layla steps onto the warm marble dais, steam swirling above like celestial silk. She keeps her shoulders relaxed, spine-erect feet parallel the stance of a miniature statue ready for worship. Nearby twins. Yasemin and Yildiz giggle louder than protocol permits, their laughter meant to advertise carefree allure. Hassan's deputy, a sharp-cheeked Ethiopian named Malik, shoots them a glance colder than winter quince. The giggles die. Layla stores the incident for future use. Nothing weakens allies like shared embarrassment. After the scrub, the oil. Rose and almond massaged in by apprentices whose anonymity grants them invisibility. Yet Layla always thanks them by name. Today she whispers, "Shukran Afia," to the smallest girl, a Sudanese orphan. No one else hears, but Afia smiles a smile. Worth more than jasmine pearls, because lower servants cross thresholds concubines cannot. If Afia delivers Layla's compliments to the laundry mistress, perhaps Layla's caftans will return, pressed a shade crisper than her rivals. Micro-advantages win macro battles. Clean-oiled and nominally natural, the women are herded toward the marble hall for roll call. Sunlight pierces febrile mosaics overhead, rendering every particle of dust visible. It is said the hall itself breathes judgment. Hassan ascends a low dais, ledger in hand. Names unfurl like silk banners: Gulbahar Hatun, Safiye Hatun, Layla bint Selim. Each woman answers with a scripted phrase, her timbre calibrated to convey chastity, obedience, and faint promise of intrigue. Layla's reply lands softly, but clearly the comma of a smile audible only to trained ears. Between names, Hassan's quill ticks paper a metronome of destiny. A pause after your name can signify scrutiny. A double pause heralds investigation. Hassan hesitates after Nadira Hatun. Not long, but long enough. Nadira's spine stiffens. Layla remembers the sash episode and makes quick mental arrangements. If Nadira stumbles, Layla will be seen as either a loyal sister or a strategic savior. Both profiles have value. She will decide which to play once Nadira's fate clarifies. Roll call ends with a clack of the ledger. Hassan intones an extra announcement: the Sultan will tour the Imperial Gardens at sunset, accompanied by a select company of 5 concubines trained in ney flute and Persian verse. Gasps ripple. Layla qualifies on both counts, yet so do 20 others. The first selection criterion everyone knows is the post-roll call tableau, how each woman occupies the 9 steps between her marble square and the exit. Those 9 steps become a catwalk of micro-gestures. Gulbahar glides with languid confidence, butter lamp eyes half closed. Yasemin and Yildiz flank each other like synchronized swans, hoping symmetry compensates for their earlier giggling. Nadira tries too hard. Her hips sway into near parity. Layla opts for precise moderation shoulders, squared chin, lifted pace, neither rushed nor languid. She lets her emerald caftan whisper just enough to suggest silk restraining possibility. At step 6, she executes a half-turn to avoid colliding with a tray runner, and the move reveals her lavender knot, not ostentatious, but memorable. Hassan's quill twitches. Outside breakfast waits on low tables, figs dusted with sugar goat cheese, laced with mint melon slices, cool as dawn. Eating remains theater. Concubines who devour food risk appearing coarse. Those who pick too daintily may be accused of affecting fragility. Layla removes 1 sugar fig, splits it delicately, and offers half to Fariha, the girl with the overdewy cheeks. Fariha's surprise is genuine, almost sweet. Alliances built across hierarchy repel suspicion. Nobody expects mentorship from a potential star. With bellies half filled and minds wholly occupied, the concubines disperse to lessons, poetry, jurisprudence loot. Rumor already flies that Hassan will observe the Persian verse recital personally. Layla changes course. She swaps her spot in the calligraphy annex with a lute student securing a seat nearer Hassan's usual vantage. Such maneuvers are invisible unless you're trained to see the ripple in the silk. When the day's final sunbeam draws a gold blade across the terrace tiles, Layla will discover whether these calculations do droplets. Lavender knots, shared figs have pointed her toward the Imperial Gardens, or dropped her into the anonymity of second dinner shift. But that revelation belongs to point 3. For now, point 2 ends exactly where a concubine's morning ends, on the knife edge between preparation and performance proof, that in the Ottoman harem, survival is less about being the most beautiful woman in the room, and more about being the most meticulously composed story. The marble hall doors have scarcely sighed shut before a page in indigo livery appears, bowing so low his turban feathers brush the floor. "Honored ladies," he recites, "Chief Eunuch Hassan requests your presence in the Cedar Library for the midday program." The words crackle down the corridor like flint on steel. The Cedar Library is where the Valid Sultan sometimes observes lessons through a gilded lattice. An invitation there is never routine. It is an examination wrapped in courtesy. Layla files in behind Gulbahar, and the twin swans her pulse drumming a patient march. The library's cedar panel walls exhale a smoky perfume that mingles with the sharper scent of ink. Sunlight pours through stained glass fanlights, scattering rubies and sapphires across the mosaic floor. Scrolls sleep in pigeonhole cubbies. Books bound in lemon-yellow leather stand like silent adjudicators. At the chamber's center, 5 low stools await one for each candidate rumored to join the Sultan in the Imperial gardens. Hassan glides forward, ledger tucked beneath his ebony arm. "Your Imperial Highness the Valid Sultan deems learning a mirror of the soul," he announces. "Today you will polish that mirror." His gaze rakes the semicircle. "Recite, demonstrate, and convince us that your grasp of art equals your promise of virtue. This is not vanity theater. It is political calculus." A concubine who quotes Rumi flawlessly may soon be reading economic edicts to foreign envoys. One who misconjugates a Persian verb could find herself reassigned to the dying sheds. Layla keeps her breathing shallow to steady the tremor in her voice box. The first task is Quranic recitation. Gulbahar intones a verse from Surah Yasin, her alto smooth as watered silk. Layla waits, counts 4 heartbeats, the interval that signals both respect and calm, and then offers Surah Rahman. Her pronunciation is crisp, neither too melodic, which would suggest a singer's frivolity, nor too dry, which would imply rote memorization. Hassan's eyebrow lifts a millimeter approval, measured in fractions. Task 2. Persian couplets. Nadira, still smarting from Hassan's hesitation at roll call, launches into Hafez, but tangles her enjambment. The stumble is minor, yet the room inhales it like a spicy rumor. When Layla's turn arrives, she chooses a couplet about gardens blooming after winter toil, an allusion she hopes to her own slow ascent. The words unfurl fluently. Behind the lattice, a silhouette likely the Valid tilts ever so slightly, as if leaning toward promise. Task 3 is musical. The twins perform a delicate ne duet, fingers fluttering like sparrow wings. Their harmony is flawless, but symmetry can read as artifice. Layla takes up the aoudi. Her piece is a short improvisation in the Maqam Hijaz, a mode rich with longing. Each plucked string arcs into the cedar rafters, then dissolves. She finishes, lets silence bloom, and bows. Hassan scribbles something quick and decisive. An attendant sweeps in, balancing 2 silver salvers, one piled with dates stuffed with crushed almonds, the other holding tiny parchment scrolls. Refreshment and reflection, announces Hassan. Choose wisely. Layla selects a single date nourishment without greed, and a scroll tied with blue thread. Unrolling it, she finds a legal riddle. If a merchant dies owing 300 silver akçe to 3 partners in unequal shares, and his estate comprises 1 spice warehouse and 2 caravans, how is the debt settled under Hanafi law? The puzzle is a test of Sharia literacy, not mathematics. Layla sketches a quick partition in her mind. convert the warehouse to cash, assign caravan shares by debt weight, protect the widow's dowry. She pens the verdict in neat Maghribi script and seals it with her thumbprint of cinnabar. A junior eunuch collects the answers. Through all this, Layla feels the lattice shadow watching, assessing posture poise and the quiet choreography of courtesy. At last, Hassan claps twice. You have served knowledge. Knowledge may serve you. The Valid Sultan thanks you. Dismiss the concubines, spill into the cypress court. Afternoon sun paints the flagstones gold. Fountain spray arcs like spun glass. The tension of examination gives way to rank speculation. Gulbahar launches a soft offensive. Your outplaying Layla haunting. Did you study under a court maestro? The words are sweet, but her eyes probe for weakness. Layla smiles. Only the wind by the Black Sea was my teacher. A half-truth. She did practice to gull calls on her childhood cliff, yet later learned embellishments from an exiled Armenian tutor. But mystery like scent lingers longer than fact. News travels on slippered feet. At sundown, the Sultan will indeed stroll the Imperial gardens, accompanied by exactly 5 concubines each to present one talent. Mary, conduit to the Valide, now holds a folded booklet containing the names. Layla's stomach tightens, but she walks to Mary with measured steps, offering both halves of her earlier date, the gesture of an equal who never presumes. Mary accepts, chewing thoughtfully. Her nod is unreadable. With 2 hours before sunset, the harem fractures into secretive preparation cells. Layla retreats to the embroidered silk studio, not to sew, but to think. She plucks a golden tulip applique from a ribbon roll and slips it into her sash, one small spotlight against the emerald fabric. She then visits the aviary, where a white starling mimics flute calls. Softly, she hums her maqam to it. If fate denies her tonight, at least one creature will remember her melody. Time compresses. Palace drums announce the 8th hour. Lanterns flicker to life. Layla stands in the waiting colonnade with 9 other hopefuls. Hassan appears flanked by 2 pages each, carrying a rosewood lantern. When I call your name, he says, step forward. Gulbahar Hatun. The twin swans exhale together, one rival secured. Layla folds her fingers inside her sleeves. Yasemin Hatun. Half the swan pair advances. Yildiz remains behind, jaw clenched. Layla bint Selim. For one suspended heartbeat, the world hushes. Then her slippers move of their own accord, silk whisper trailing. She joins the chosen circle. 2 more names. Fariha justice for nervous cheeks, and Nadira maybe that lattice turned pity into opportunity. 5 women now stand haloed by lantern glow. Hassan bestows final instructions. Each must present her talent briefly as the Sultan passes. Any lapse in decorum will expunge the honor. They proceed through vine-veiled arches into the Imperial gardens. Sunset smudges the sky. Violet washing the marble fountain's spray in rose gold. Night-blooming jasmines exhale sweetness so thick it feels chewable. Musicians stationed under palm leaf trellises strike soft chords. The Sultan appears his silhouette backlit by torchlight turban wrapped in imperial white. He walks with measured leisure hands clasped behind, as though pacing a dream. Behind him glides the Valid face, veiled but posture regal. Beside him pads Chief Eunuch Hassan Ledger, now replaced by a peacock feather fan. Gulbahar steps forward, first offering a quince amber scent blended by her own hand. The Sultan inhales, nods, moves on. Yasemin performs Anay trill notes, sliding like moonlight on water. Fariha recites a single surah, her voice steadier than at dawn. Nadira, harnessing second chances, unleashes a bold fragment of Hafez's eyes aflame. Layla is last. She kneels on the jade-tiled path and places her oud across her lap. The instrument's walnut bowl gleams. She plucks the opening phrase of her Hijaz improvisation, but this time she modulates weaving in the call of the palace nightingale perched overhead. The bird answers a lilting echo. Music and nature braid into one shimmering strand. The Sultan pauses. For 3 breaths, she counts the torchlight, etches his face into attentive marble. When the cadence resolves, Layla lowers her pick bows and retreats. Hassan's eyes flicker approval. The Valide's veil dips a signal received. The procession moves on lanterns dwindling into the lilac dusk. Layla remains amid jasmine shadows, pulse hammering. She does not know whether tonight's performance secures intimacy patronage or merely tomorrow's survival. Yet in that suspended moment, she feels history pivot. A gray-eyed girl from the Black Sea coast plucked the strings of destiny, and the empire listened. Behind her, the white starling sings what it learned. Somewhere beyond the Bosphorus breathes in vast indifference, but the harem's smaller universe has shifted by a petal's width, a distance that in Topkapi separates anonymity from legend. Point 3 concludes as lanterns wink out, and the garden's silence swells, stage set for Point 4, when night's true intrigues begin to coil behind ruby-shuttered doors. Moonrise whitens the garden fountains, turning every droplet into quicksilver. Layla exhales the last tremor from her oud performance and steps back through the vine-cut arch that leads to the inner court. The marble tiles are still warm. Palace walls hold heat the way grandmothers hold secrets. Far behind, Gulbahar's quince perfume mingles with torch smoke, but distance robs it of menace. For now, a servant appears with a folded shawl, the color of dried rose petals, plain wool, no embroidery. The message is clear: she may have played for an emperor, but she must walk the corridor as inconspicuously as any laundry girl. Layla drapes the wool across her emerald caftan, hiding the tulip applique that had winked beneath the Sultan's torchlight, and joins the river of lesser courtiers returning to their wings. Dinner unfolds in the cypress court under a canopy of velvet night. Copper braziers burn orange, spitting resinous pine sparks. Shadows dance against colonnades where eunuchs stand like mute chess pieces. Bowls of shehrai soup, quail glazed with pomegranate, and apricots poached in rose syrup glide across low tables. Yet most women taste little. They eat speculation instead. Who caught the Sultan's eye? Did the Valide nod or merely tilt? Were 5 breaths of attention worth 5 months of scheming? Layla sips saffron broth, sparingly masking impatience with good manners. At the next table, Yasemin and the newly spurned Yildiz argue about the precise angle of the Sultan's chin when Layla played her Hijaz variation. Yasemin insists it tipped forward, a sign of interest. Yildiz retorts that torchlight alters everything. Layla files away. The quarrel-sibling friction can be redirected like a diverted canal. Mary, the Valide's confidant, circulates with the serene gait of someone holding better cards than anyone knows. She stops before Layla and places a single pistachio onto her plate. No words, only a pistachio, a nut with 2 shells. Twin embers of meaning. Acceptance test warning. Layla cracks it open slowly. Inside sleeps a perfectly green kernel, unblemished, indivisible. She eats it whole. The first drumbeat of the wolf hour. A deep, hollow boom echoes across the courtyards. It signals curfew. Those with sanctioned duties may wander. All others must retreat to their assigned chambers. Yet night in Topkapi is a lattice with secret openings. Letters slip through laundry chutes. Promises cross terraces on the wings of trained owls. Favors change hands in the silent language of lamps extinguished in specific patterns. Layla rises, bows to the table, and moves toward the dormitory shawl, tight and face composed. Inside the dormitory, lamps are shuttered to slits. Rows of pallets form an orchard of muted breaths. Layla kneels by her own corner and pretends to untie her slippers while scanning the room. Nadira lies 2 beds away, eyes shut but fists clenched, gripping the memory of her Hafez couplet like a rope above deep water. Fariha braids her hair with nervous speed, each loop a counted prayer. Gulbahar is absent. Rumor says royal eunuchs escorted her to the gilded baths, either for an anointment of favor or a purge of presumption. Palace coin has 2 faces. Layla slips her lavender sprig from her sash and tucks it under her pillow alongside the earlier poem scrap. The scent is faint now, but memory strengthens what reality forgets. She lowers herself onto the cotton pallet. The room's hush is so complete that the distant hum of the Bosphorus seems like blood coursing through stone veins. Minutes or hours. Time liquefies in tension pass before the latch clicks. Chief Eunuch Hassan's silhouette fills the doorway lamplight, forming a halo around his carved profile. He scans the pallet's ledger in hand. Layla bint Selim, he whispers. A ripple spreads. Nadira inhales too sharply. A girl at the far end mutters a quick prayer. Layla steadies her heartbeat rises, adjusts the plain shawl, and follows Hassan into the moon-washed corridor. No questions, the harem trains obedience into muscle memory. They walk past tiled alcoves where gilt-caged canaries sleep, past the marble lion fountain where assassins once met their silence, and stop before a cedar door embossed with tulips. Inside waits Mary, her silver hairnet catching lamplight like frost on spider silk. She dismisses Hassan with a nod and motions Layla to sit on a cushioned dais. On a low table rests a porcelain cup of thick coffee, its surface lacquered with foam. Mary speaks first. Voice low and unhurried. The Sultan asks for another evening promenade soon. The Validi wonders whether your skill can command more than nightingales. Layla bows. I will endeavor to move constellations if he wishes. A clever answer, Mary says, sipping the coffee herself. But cleverness curdles if it's overfed. The palace prefers subtle flavors. She places the pistachio shells on the table halves, facing upward. 2 shells, 1 heart. You and Gulbahar share tonight's favor. Tomorrow, the Valid will test whose kernel proves sweeter. Layla senses the trap hidden in generosity. She asks, how may I best assist her testing? Mary's eyes gleam. Gulbahar is perfection molded by court tutors. You are imperfection shaped by the Black Sea wind. The Sultan enjoys surprises. Perhaps your tale should blow a little harder, a riddle draped in guidance. Layla folds her hands. Then I will let the wind speak. Mary nods satisfied. She rises, producing a thin slate tablet. On it lies a single line of Ottoman script calligraphy. Senetin kapısı, rüzgarla açılır. Heaven's gate opens with the wind. Mary hands Layla the slate. Copy this 10 times before dawn. Each copy must differ in flourish, yet keep the letters true. Give them to the junior eunuchs who handle the Sultan's breakfast trays. Let them scatter where eyes may find inspiration. Calligraphy as covert advertisement. Layla bows again, accepts reed pens and a jar of indigo ink, then returns to her pallet under discreet escort. Others feign sleep, but curiosity prickles the air. She ignores them, sets her writing board across her knees, and begins. Ink flows. With every stroke, she revisits beaches, where gulls whipped her braids, remembers the salt taste of freedom threads that memory into the looping llama leaves. 10 copies completed, she fans them dry folds, each into a square, no larger than a pistachio kernel, and tucks them into her sash. The second drumbeat rolls a softer echo signaling deepest night. Layla tiptoes to the corridor, where two junior eunuchs barely older than herself polish brass ewers. She bows murmurs. A gift for the dawn trays, let the wind decide its path. One boy hides a smile. The other bows too low, nearly dropping his ewer. Seeds sown. Back in bed, she finally lets exhaustion nudge her eyelids. Yet before sleep claims her two more sounds puncture the hush, a distant door gliding open in Gulbahar's wing, then a muffled sob, someone chastened, or worse, repositioned. The palace machine grinds on smelting triumph and despair in the same crucible. Layla dreams of tulip fields quivering under coastal gales. When pre-dawn azan trembles through lattice windows, she wakes and smells lavender on her pillow, strong as when it bloomed. She smiles not in victory, but in readiness. Point 4 closes here, poised on the rim of dawn. Where indigo ink, still moist on her fingers, hints that the real contest for the Sultan's attention will be waged not by the prettiest face, but by the cleverest whisper carried on morning wind. Point 5 will step into that dawn, tracking how a scattering of calligraphy squares can upend alliances faster than any sword. Point 5 awakens, where Point 4 drifted into uneasy sleep at that knife-edge moment when indigo ink still stains Layla's fingers and the palace night tips into dawn. The first azan shivers through Topkapa's latticed windows, mingling with the faint clang of bakers sliding flatbread into bronze ovens. Sky and stone blanch together. Purple melts into pewter. In kitchens beneath the harem, two junior eunuchs, each clutching 5 tiny squares of calligraphed parchment, assemble the Sultan's breakfast array. They slide one square beneath a saucer of apricot jam, tuck another beside a silver coffee spoon, perch the rest atop folded linens destined for the Imperial terrace. Heaven's gate opens with the wind ripples across all 5 in Layla's steady hand, each line ornamented with a different flourish. One tulip. Curved one, arrow-sharp one, looping like sea foam. The squares look casually strewn, but their placement follows the geometry of seduction. Everywhere the Sultan reaches the phrase, "We'll greet him first." Shortly after sunrise, Sultan Selim emerges on the terrace, flanked by Chief Eunuch Hassan and a scribe armed with an ivory tablet. Fresh Bosphorus air drapes his caftan with brine and hyacinth. He lifts the coffee lid, discovers the first parchment, and reads silently. Eyebrows arch, amused. At the jam saucer, a second square appears. At the linen stack, a third. Selim chuckles, a warm, surprised sound rarely heard beyond war councils, and turns to Hassan. The palace teaches winds new tricks, he remarks. Hassan, catching the glint in his master's eyes, bows without comment, but pockets one parchment for the Valid's inspection. Word flies faster than gulls. By mid-morning, every corridor knows the Sultan smiled 3 times before touching his cup. The legend inflates some claim he laughed aloud. Others swear he quoted the phrase to his guard captain. Inside the harem, excitement erupts like cloves dropped in hot sugar. Gulbahar's ladies whisper that their mistress must be the mysterious scribe. Who else possesses such elegant penmanship? Nadira hedges, voicing a different rumor. The hand is a northern breeze, hinting at Layla. Rivalry constructions multiply as quickly as tulip bulbs come spring. While tongues flutter, the Valid Sultan receives Hassan in her cedar-scented salon. She studies the parchment he presents, traces the ink ridge with one lacquered nail, then nods. A bold breeze indeed, she murmurs. Not Gulbahar's style, too playful. Bring the contenders. Her command hangs in the perfumed air like a drawn bow. Minutes later, Hassan appears in the dormitory doorway, ledger in hand. Layla bint Selim. Gulbahar Hatun. Attend Her Imperial Highness. Gasps pepper the silence. Fariha's braid freezes mid-loop. Yasemin clutches her nay as though it could shield jealousy. Layla stands heart-steady lavender scent lingering in her braid. Gulbahar rises to mouth composed, but eyes flickering with calculation. Together, they follow Hassan through hushed colonnades toward the Valide's salon, walking side by side like parallel prophecies. Inside, the Valide reclines against a brocade bolster patterned with emerald tulips Mary by her elbow. Light slants through painted shutters, striping the carpet like tiger hide. Without preamble, the Valide lifts a parchment. "Which of you invited this wind?" Gulbahar steps forward first. "Your humble servant, exalted mother, would never presume to intrude upon His Majesty's breakfast unbidden. My ink remains devoted to hymns and genealogies." The statement denies guilt, yet flatters her own gravitas a safe play. Layla bows lower. "Exalted mother, the wind travels where walls leave a crack. If any person guided it, she merely offered parchment wings." She meets the Valide's gaze with disarming openness, half confession, half fable. Mary's mouth twitches at the corner. She recognizes her own midnight lesson blooming in daylight. The Valide studies both women, then gestures toward an onyx stand bearing reed pens and a scroll. "Prove whose hand matches the breeze." Copy the phrase once. Gulbahar's strokes are statuesque, precise, symmetrical, almost solemn. Layla writes in one fluid breath. Her letters breathe the final ruzgar curling like salt spray across teak railings. The Valide compares samples, smiles faintly. An artist, she pronounces, but is she also a stateswoman? Without warning, she unrolls a second scroll, an excerpt from a treaty draft between the Porte and Venice. Paragraphs of legal Arabic and Florentine cipher sprawl across the parchment. Summarize this for a diplomat arriving within the hour, the Valide orders. Time drips like molten copper. Gulbahar scans the text lips, moving in silent translation. Layla reads too, nostrils catching the peppery smell of fresh ink. She spots clauses about export tariffs, safe conduct for Venetian merchants, and a delicate passage limiting arms shipments. Gulbahar speaks first, outlining grain quotas and tribute schedules accurate if dry. Layla follows, but shapes the summary into a story. The draft offers Venice wheat and peace in exchange for respect along the Adriatic, and a promise that cannon barrels sail no farther than Ragusa. It flatters their merchants, reigns their admirals, and likens alliance to a ship whose sails we both must mend. Her imagery paints policy with color. Mary's eyes glimmer approval. The Valide rises decision sealed. Layla will read the treaty to the ambassador at midday. Gulbahar will oversee the music ensemble. Winds and chords serve the empire together. The verdict is merciful yet unmistakable. Layla's star has climbed ahead. Gulbahar curtsies, poise intact, but jaw tight. Politics teaches losers to applaud their successors. Back in the harem corridor, Gulbahar halts Layla with a lace-gloved hand. "Enjoy today's breeze," she murmurs. Tomorrow, the weather shifts. No threat, just meteorological prophecy. Layla inclines her head. Black Sea daughters respect storms, but they never anchor to fear. Hours later, Layla sits in a jasmine-scented audience chamber before a lanky Venetian envoy whose beard forks like river deltas. She recites the treaty in polished Italian learned from an Armenian tutor, peppering phrases with Ottoman honorifics and nautical metaphors. The envoy nods, clearly charmed by her fluency, then requests clarification on the arms clause. Layla answers smoothly, referencing both Islamic jurisprudence and Adriatic shipping precedent. Hassan, standing guard, notes every syllable for his nightly report. As the envoy departs pleased, Layla feels invisible threads tighten. She has spoken imperial policy into being. That authority tastes different from performing music or imitating perfection. It is iron disguised as silk. Mehri approaches afterward, pressing a jasper seal into Layla's palm, a miniature tulip afloat on swirling green. A token, she says. You may need to stamp documents again. Translation, more tasks, deeper stakes. Rumor outruns her back to the harem. By sunset, every dormitory corner buzzes Layla advised the Sultan on Venice. Layla carries the Valide's seal. Layla might teach calligraphy to princes. Nadira congratulates her with genuine warmth. Yasemin's smile quivers somewhere between envy and awe. Even Yildiz bows, which scholars of harem etiquette will later interpret as a political pivot. Nightfall's braziers flare, but fear does not creep under Layla's door. She cleans her reed pen, stores the jasper seal in a cedar box, and writes a single new line on fresh parchment. Even the calmest wind rearranges the stars. She folds it without flourish and tucks it where only lavender scent keeps watch. Point 5 closes as Layla extinguishes her lamp, the empire turning quietly beyond her lattice. Tomorrow the weather may indeed shift, perhaps toward tempests, perhaps toward sunrise, but she now controls at least one of its invisible currents. Point 6 will chart how that current collides with deeper tides, Gulbahar's wounded ambition, Mehri's subtle mentorship, and the Sultan's renewed curiosity for the breeze from the Black Sea. Even the palace cats pause as if they too sense new currents stirring. Layla has slept for 3 hours, yet her mind is already marching ahead, replaying yesterday's triumph with the Venetian envoy and rehearsing the dangers that inevitably trail success. When the crier's second azan ripples across the Bosphorus, she pushes aside her quilt pocket's Mary's jasper seal and steps into a corridor silvery with pre-dawn haze. Outside, the cypress court smells of wet marble and rose vines rinsed by night dew. Kitchen boys carry baskets of simmet, their laughter bouncing off arches. Starlings wheel overhead, mimicking fragments of court music. Layla watches them for a moment, remembering how her own melody once coaxed a nightingale into song. A reminder that even creatures of instinct respond to carefully tuned notes. She resolves to keep her instrument's lute voice wit in perfect pitch. Discord now could crack the fragile shell of favor surrounding her. Mary summons her to a secluded veranda overlooking the Imperial menagerie. Peacocks strut below tails, dragging like jeweled carpets. Mary pours cardamom tea, her bracelets chiming. The Sultan read your treaty summary at dawn, she says, without greeting. He underlined 2 of your metaphors and asked whether the scribe had ever seen Venetian galleys firsthand. I told him the Black Sea wind owns sharp eyes. A subtle smile follows. He will send for you this afternoon, informal, but carry wisdom the way a tulip carries dew, visible not dripping. Layla bows. Gratitude tempered by caution. Mary sets down her cup. Gulbahar is gathering her lute ensemble for a garden recital. She will perform the Rose of Shiraz, a piece designed to bloom only once. Expect thorns hidden in its scent. Then, almost as an afterthought, Mary adds, the Valida wishes you to instruct the young Shehzadeh twins in calligraphy before noon. First impressions on royal canvas must be flawless. Tasks layered like phyllo pastry teach princes outmaneuver Gulbahar's music, impress the Sultan. Layla leaves the veranda, walking briskly beneath frescoed soffits until she reaches the schoolroom. 2 6-year-old princes, Mehmed and Orhan, race wooden camels across the tiled floor, their tutor chasing in mock despair. Layla kneels, eyes level with theirs, shows them her reed pens, and promises they will paint with wind. Intrigued, the boys settle at a low table. She demonstrates each stroke, verticals steady, as masts, horizontals light as sea foam, diacritical dots like gulls poised on rigging. The princes mimic her giggling when blotches form. She praises courage over neatness, teaching that bold ink can be scraped. but timid ink vanishes forever. By lesson's end, each boy has written the tulip-curved phrase from the breakfast parchments. Their tutor applauds, relieved. Word of the class flutters through the nursery staff to the valide, who dispatches a single rosebud tied with green silk to Layla's dormitory pillow, a silent commendation. Yet roses fade quickly in palace heat, and Gulbahar's recital approaches. Layla changes into a dawn-blue caftan, outlined with silver thread, neither ostentatious nor meek. Ties her lavender sprig at the waist and heads toward the Sultan's private colonnade. She arrives to find musicians tuning under a pergola draped with wisteria. Gulbahar stands at the center, gleaming in ruby silk, her oud polished to mirror shine. When she spots Layla, her smile is cordial, but her eyes sharpen. The wind returns, she murmurs. Shall we see if it can bend roses without breaking them? Layla inclines her head, locating her own spot on a marble bench. Mary glides in. Moments later, followed by the Sultan in a sea-green cloak, his mood unreadable but alert. Gulbahar begins. Rose of Shiraz unfurls in arabesques of minor chords, her voice threading through them like scented smoke. Palace doves hush. Even the fountain seems to lower its whisper. Midway, however, Layla notices a calculated tension. Gulbahar shifts tempo, coaxing the ensemble into complex modulations, a daring flourish, but one that risks dissonance. True enough, a flutist flubs around the note, cracking. Gulbahar's eyebrow twitches and the charm fractures. She finishes with poise, yet silence afterward is thick and ambiguous. The Sultan nods politely and turns to Layla. I hear the princes now draft poetry in ink that smells of sea wind, he says, voice carrying both curiosity and challenge. Would you show us your breeze? Layla reaches for the spare oud resting nearby. It isn't hers, but instrument choice matters less than intention. She selects the Hijaz maqam again, yet threads into it a fresh counter-melody. Faint echoes of Venetian sailors' chants she heard once on a Black Sea pier. The tune sails forward, nimble but unhurried, then resolves into a quiet cadence reminiscent of distant gulls. When she ends, she does not look at the Sultan. Instead, she lets the final resonance drift toward him, like foam curling to shore. Soft claps from Mary. A thoughtful nod from the Sultan. Music that remembers journeys, he says, and treaties, perhaps. He dismisses the gathering, inviting Layla to accompany him on a shaded walk. Gulbahar dips a curtsy, lips sealed, yet Layla catches the faintest tremor in her rival's lute-hand anger, or anxiety, or both. During the stroll, the Sultan asks about her upbringing. She speaks of fishing villages, buffeted by Atlantic gales of mothers mending nets, while reciting hafiz of merchants who swapped pepper for proverbs. He listens, intrigued. Then he poses the real test. Venice requests leniency on cannon exports. What says the wind? Layla answers that cannons pointed outward invite wars inward. Better to lease knowledge of casting rather than barrels themselves, an arrangement that fattens coffers yet limits threats. The Sultan strokes his beard. A gale sharper than grape shot, he muses. I will consider. Afternoon light tilts. Duties call him elsewhere. He hands Layla a coin bronze bearing a tulip on one face and a compass rose on the other. Spend it or keep it, he says. Either way, it leads. She bows coin warm in her palm. Back in the harem, Layla finds Gulbahar waiting beside the Lionhead fountain. Water splashes rhythmic suspense between them. Gulbahar's courtesy vanishes. You've flown high on borrowed thermals, she hisses. Winds shift. Be careful when they drop. Layla meets her gaze unflinching. A sailor reads the sky, she replies. She does not curse it. Gulbahar's nostrils flare. She turns on her heel ruby skirts, swirling like embers. That night, Mary visits Layla's corner, carrying a rolled parchment sealed in wax. From the Valida, she whispers, "The prince's petition for another lesson." Below the petition script lies a shorter note. "Tomorrow prepare a fable about women who wield swords as well as pens." Layla recalls the harem storytellers' tales of warrior queens Amanirenas, Amina Kaula, Bint al-Azwar, and senses the Valide's deeper intent to remind young heirs that power wears many guises, including feminine armor. She spends midnight drafting a fable where an Ottoman concubine befriends a Dahomey Amazon and a Roman gladiatrix, each teaching the other a skill calligraphy for spear-throwing, chess for shield work. The moral alliances bloom when strengths trade places. Satisfied, she folds the story, presses the Sultan's compass tulip coin into its spine, and sleeps. Point 6 closes as she dreams of carts loaded with tulip bulbs rumbling toward spring markets, and cannons rusting beneath vines, visions hinting that the breezes she's summoned may swell into winds capable of reshaping gardens treaties, and perhaps the empire itself. Point 7 will open at dawn with Gulbahar's next maneuver and the Valide's test of stories sharpened like steel. Point 7 opens on a sky the color of tempered steel minutes before dawn. Layla wakes to the rustle of rose-red petals, the Valide scattered outside her door, an unspoken reminder that today's lesson for the princes must bloom without wilting. She tucks the folded fable between her reed pens, slips Mary's jasper seal into her sash, and steps into corridors still scented with last night's wisteria. The nursery is a world apart, panels painted with flying horses, carpets littered with carved ivory soldiers. Sheikh-Zada Mehmed and Orhan wait cross-legged, each guarding an inkstone like a miniature fortress. Their tutor bows out as soon as Layla enters. Behind a lattice, she senses the Valida's presence, silent and watchful. Layla begins unfurling the story she wrote in the midnight hush. First comes Amanirenas, the one-eyed queen of Kush, riding a war elephant against Augustus's legions. Next strides Amina of Zazau, spear flashing beneath Saharan suns. Finally, Kaula bint al-Azwar charges a Byzantine line, black cloak billowing like a storm front. At each name, she dips her pen, sketching swift silhouettes, a curved blade here, a braided shield strap there. Ink and imagination fuse. The boys lean closer, eyes bright. She weaves a final scene where the three heroines meet an Ottoman concubine who trades calligraphy for combat tricks, spears for strokes, shields for verses, until each woman holds both weapon and word. Strength, Layla concludes, chooses many costumes. When letters learn to parry and spears learn to sign empires last longer than iron. Orhan grins ink, blotting his thumb like a campaign wound. Mehmed immediately asks for another reed pen so he can arm his words too. A soft clap from the lattice Valide approved thunder. She steps out, takes the fable, and presses her seal beside Layla's tulip coin. The twins will memorize this. Tonight, you will tell it again, this time in the Sultan's salon. Layla bows heart steady, but pulse quickening. Intimate storytelling for a monarch requires a blade-thin balance of daring and decorum. By late morning, however, a colder wind sweeps the harem. Gulbahar's ladies whisper that Layla once served wine in a Bosphorus tavern, charming smugglers with contraband chansons. The tale grows, scales with every retelling. Now she forges scrolls, pilfers treaty seals, siphons secrets to Venetian spies. Rumor, like plague, prefers crowded quarters. Soon, kitchen maids gossip in flowery clouds, and eunuchs pass coded shrugs. Mary intercepts Layla outside the hammam. The ruby rose plots frost, she warns. Gulbahar believes music failed her. She tries stale poison instead. Antidote quickly before the Valide tastes it. Layla exhales no anger, just calculation. If rumor spreads unchecked, her coin of favor could flip. She asks Mary for an audience with Chief Eunuch Hassan. A ledger she knows outranks gossip. Hassan, ever precise, grants 5 minutes in the Cedar Library. Layla enters, carrying her fable scroll and 3 blot-free treaty drafts she copied at dawn, proof that her calligraphy and seal remain inside palace walls, not in any tavern. My loyalty, she says, laying the texts before him, is written where the Empire can always read it. Hassan inspects notes her untrembling hands and murmurs he will relay authenticity to the Valide. Ledger lines close over slander like stone on embers, yet Gulbahar is not finished. At the afternoon chess demonstration staged for visiting dignitaries, she chooses Layla as her opponent, public and unavoidable. The board sits on a pearl-inlaid table beneath citrus trees, pieces carved into Ottoman galleys and Venetian gondolas. Courtiers gather wagering candied almonds on every exchange. Gulbahar opens bold, sacrificing a bishop to trap Layla's rook, a mirror of the rumor gambit. Layla counters by advancing a modest pawn deep into enemy territory, forcing Gulbahar to overextend. Spectators murmur. Hassan's quill pauses mid-air. Within 14 moves, Layla's wind pawn promotes to a queen and delivers check. She bows not to gloat, but to note the lesson small truths marched steadily can overturn flamboyant lies. The Sultan arrives just as the final piece falls. He studies the frozen board, then Layla's calm expression, and laughs softly. A gale again, he says. First treaties, now tides of marble. He invites both women to his sunset salon Gulbahar to supply music Layla to recount her warrior fable. 2 talents side by side. One last weigh-in. Twilight paints the audience hall apricot and amethyst. Gulbahar strums Rose of Shiraz once more, stripping away yesterday's dissonance until notes float flawless as incense. She finishes to warm applause. Then Layla steps forward, scroll hidden. She will speak, not read. Her voice unspools Amanirenas' elephant charge, Amina's desert thunder, Kakshala's black cloak whirlwind. She folds in a new epilogue. The concubine trains the heroines to sign their own peace accords while they teach her to wield a shield, not to make war, but to guard her ink from flame. The Sultan listens, elbow on knee, eyes narrowed as if measuring horizon winds. When the tale concludes, he rises, crosses to the chessboard, waiting in a corner, and selects the wind pawn, now a queen. He places it on the fable scroll and says, "Let the Empire remember stories that guard us better than walls." He signals Hassan, who nods to scribes. Copies will go to the palace school tomorrow. Gulbahar bows gracefully, but the set of her shoulders shows strain. Defeated twice in one day, her ruby silk suddenly seems heavy. Later, under lantern glow, Mary finds Layla on the terrace overlooking a silvered Bosphorus. She hands her a slim onyx ring etched with twin tulips. "The Valide's token," she says. "Wear it when palace storms gather its twins, remind you that power and peril travel together." Layla slips the ring on, feeling both weight and buoyancy. Before sleep, she adds a new couplet to her pillow archive. "When rumor storms anchor truth in ink. When envy flowers prune with story." The lavender scent agrees. Point 7 ends with Layla watching gulls dive for moonlit fish, realizing the sea and the court share one rule. Currents never rest, and neither can she. Point 8 will rise with a foreign envoy whose demands test her freshly minted authority, and a Gulbahar no longer content with rumor or music, but ready to redraw the palace wind chart in darker strokes. Sunrise saffron light combs through latticework, striping the corridors like tiger claws. Layla wakes early slips on a smoke-gray caftan, trimmed with river blue piping neutral ground between Ottoman crimson and Persian emerald, and secures the twin tulip onyx ring Mary gave her. As she reaches for her reed pens, she notices something missing her lavender sprig. A chill threads her spine. She always tucks it the night before. On the cushion lies only a single ruby petal mocking. Gulbahar's color. No time to dwell. Mary's page summons her to the throne antechamber, where Valide Sultan and Chief Eunuch Hassan review last-minute briefings. Scrolls map border forts, silk tax margins, pilgrim route tolls. The Sultan reads swiftly, then glances at Layla. The envoy may butter his bread with poetry, he warns, but he sharpens his knife on doctrine. Listen for steel. Layla bows quietly, repeating the envoy's name, Mirza Razi al-Din Kazvini, until it fits her cadence like a drumbeat. Mid-morning caravan bells jingle through the first courtyard. Mirza Razi arrives in a peacock blue robe beard, oiled and forked, flanked by two scholars who carry rosewater flasks and portable chessboards, a gesture of cultured intent. Hassan escorts them across sunlit marble into the Jade Hall, where emerald tiles reflect enough green to tint every face, hopeful or queasy. Protocol dictates coffee first, so Layla enters carrying a tray of tiny handleless cups. She pours with practiced stillness, then knees lightly to offer Mirza Razi the first cup. The envoy studies her ring arches one eyebrow and recites a Ferdowsi couplet about twin tulips blooming on contested soil. A test. Layla answers with Hafez. When rivals tend one garden, both learn the fragrance of the other's dawn. Slight smile from Razi. Metal sheath meets silk scabbard sparring begun. Negotiations unfurl like chess openings, safe-controlled each side, advancing minor pieces, dates of border patrols, counts of caravans lost to bandits. Layla translates with limpid precision, but also filters tone. Razi's mild apology carries veiled accusation. Her Ottoman general's rebuttal hints, concession behind bluster. She rephrases harsh syllables into neutral imagery. Weeds may choke the path, yet gardeners share blame, allowing both parties to save face without losing ground. During a recess for pomegranate sherbet, Gulbahar appears in the musician's alcove ruby silk, blazing beneath daylight. She launches into a Persian dastgah rarely performed in Ottoman courts, mahur bright and intricate. Razi's scholars pause mid-sip, clearly impressed. The envoy himself taps the table in rhythm. Layla recognizes the gambit Gulbahar courts Persian admiration to undermine Layla's narrative monopoly. Two can play. She approaches the envoy with a parchment map pointing out pilgrimage wells, her childhood village once provisioned places where Persian and Ottoman travelers already share water. Personal anecdote trumps musical display. Razi's interest pivots. Second negotiation round the thorniest issue Safavid request to parade symbolic cannons through Tabriz during Navruz. Ottomans fear the show of force. Razi quotes precedent. Ottoman viziers bristle. Layla intervenes. Let the cannons fire. Blank charges of rose petals, witnessed by Ottoman gunners, verifying the barrels are unmixed with powder. The hall hushes, weighing imagery. Even Gulbahar's lute misses a beat. Sultan's eyes gleam. Razi strokes his beard. A scholar calculates cost of petals, nods. Breakthrough. Yet the wind shifts darker. Between sessions, Mary draws Layla aside, voice hushed. A rumor spreads that you bartered canon secrets for Persian verses. It echoes last week's tavern lie louder now, dripping with evidence. Layla's stomach knots. Gulbahar, again sharpening old gossip with new context. If the envoy slightest hint of espionage truce will rot before parchment dries. She needs proof of innocence fast. Recalling her missing lavender sprig, she suspects planted sabotage. She dispatches a trusted laundry girl, Afia, to search Gulbahar's wing for any item bearing Layla's seal or script. Meanwhile, she focuses on dinner preparations, requesting that the dessert course include tulip petal jam served in clear glass bowls. A coded signal translucent truth. Dusk paints jade tiles bronze. Banquet tables groan with stuffed vine leaves, saffron pilaf lamb scented with cinnamon. Torchlight flickers over faces flushed with hours of cautious optimism. Just before dessert, Hassan receives word from palace guards in Gulbahar's private scroll case. They found a lavender sprig pressed inside a sheet of parchment. Layla's handwriting expertly forged to reveal troop counts at Ardahan Fort. Enough to ruin her. But the trap is sprung too early. Hassan recognized the counterfeit calligraphy because he holds Layla's authenticated treaty drafts. Hassan confronts Gulbahar discreetly outside the banquet hall. Layla glimpses the scene through a lattice Gulbahar style composed yet color drains from her face as forged evidence surfaces. She pleads ignorance a maid must have slipped it. Hassan's expression is iron. He orders an inquiry and by protocol removes Gulbahar from performance duties pending truth. Her ruby silhouette disappears down a shadowed corridor. Thunder rolled back into its cloud. Dessert arrives clear bowls of scarlet jam dotted with candied lavender. Layla stands to explain to the Sultan, and envoy tulip petals, once poised to arm a cannon salute, now sweeten our table. May every weapon we refuse become a flavor we share. Razi raises his spoon in toast. The Sultan follows. Treaty terms finalize minutes later. Petal salute accepted border patrol schedules matched caravan taxes reduced. After the diplomats depart with satisfied smiles and boxes of honeyed nuts, the Sultan calls Layla to the fountain court. Moonlight blades the water. He hands her a slender scroll sealed in gold, an imperial commendation naming her guardian of letters and breezes. The title allows her chambers outside the main dormitory and authority to tutor royal offspring in arts and statecraft. Layla bows, pulse thundering. She asks softly about Gulbahar. The Sultan sighs. Ambition sharpens talent until it cuts its maker. The Valid will judge. Compassion flickers in Layla's chest. Gulbahar had brilliance, but desperation drowned it. Later that night, Mary visits Layla's new study, a small cedar room overlooking starlit roofs, to deliver two items, Afia's sworn deposition clearing Layla and Gulbahar's lute, its strings clipped. She is sent to the old palace to reflect Mary reports. Take this as reminder, music survives movers. Layla accepts the silent lute feeling neither triumph nor relief, only quiet acknowledgement of how narrow the ledge between rise and ruin truly is. She places the lute on a shelf beside her inkstones, then unrolls the gold-sealed commendation. At the bottom, beneath the Sultan's signature, is a sketch of a compass rose tulip, his private mark for journeys unfinished. She smiles, sets reed to parchment, and writes a new proverb for her pillow archive. The strongest treaty is inked in petals, the sharpest sabotage withers in moonlight. Point 8 closes with Layla gazing over domes that gleam like hammered pewter, aware that every new height grants clearer views of incoming storms. Point 9 will dawn with her first day as guardian of letters and breezes, and the unexpected arrival of a Venetian courier bearing news that could turn yesterday's victory into tomorrow's quandary. Point 9 opens on a dawn poured from molten pewter. Layla's first sunrise as guardian of letters and breezes. From her new cedar-framed study, she watches the palace domes blush pink, marveling that the skyline itself seems to bow in quiet acknowledgement of her elevation. Yet the title feels less like a crown than a debt every favor won must now be defended, and Gulbahar's clipped lute leaning against her bookshelf reminds her how quickly brilliance can be tuned to silence. Breakfast arrives on a silver tray. Figs cheese and a single sprig of fresh lavender, a wordless salute from Mary. Layla pins the sprig at her sash and turns to the day's scrolls copies of the Safavid Accord, awaiting her stylistic polish before they enter Imperial archives. Study plans for the princes who will soon trade toy camels for rhetoric. And a brief, curious notice from the outer gatekeepers. Venetian courier bearing urgent correspondence claims sealed friendship of Marco degli Argenti. Marco, the silver-tongued envoy, who once traded silk tariffs for sonnets, rarely dispatched messengers without purpose. Chief Eunuch Hassan appears led by the click of jade beads. The courier, he says, carries dispatches addressed to the guardian herself. An unusual protocol breach. Foreign letters normally pass first through chancery. The Sultan permits direct audience. Hassan adds voice flat, but eyes measuring how deeply surprise chisels Layla's composure. She thanks him, folds the notice, and follows through halls echoing with the weekly ablution drums. In the audience niche, a wiry Venetian stands in travel-stained leather cap feather, wilted from Bosphorus humidity. He bows, presents a lacquered tube bound by green silk. Layla breaks the wax. Inside lies a single sheet written in Marco's elegant Italian. The Doge considers last month's tariff victory endangered. A rogue admiral readies cannon shipments east. Intelligence names. Port authority compromised. Trust only the breeze. Below a sketch of a compass rose tulip, Marco's private signature mirroring the Sultan's recent coin. An echo across empires. Layla's pulse thumps. Cannon shipments east toward Persia. If Venice arms rogue factions, yesterday's petal piece could wither overnight. She poses neutral questions. Why bring the warning directly to her? The courier replies that Marco values channels unsullied by chancery intrigue. Whispers claim Layla's ink travels faster than bureaucrats. Flattery perhaps, but the alarm feels real. She escorts the courier to Hassan for formal lodging, then hurries to Mary's quarters. The elder lady listens while rose oil lamps cast restless shadows across parchment walls. Mary frowns. Venice risks Ottoman wrath to profit from Persian fear. We cannot let petals turn to powder. Safest course, she argues, is swift disclosure to the Valid and Sultan. Yet timing is delicate announced too early and risk poisoning yesterday's triumph. Wait and rogue guns may sail. Layla suggests triangulating truth first. They need independent confirmation ship manifests. Doc whispers anything. Mary nods. I'll loose the palace pigeons, she says her code for trusted spies at Galata Piers. Meanwhile, Layla must stabilize the internal front, for rumors will leak like wine from a cracked amphora once the courier's presence spreads. She begins with the prince's lesson, choosing a parable about a fisherman who nets both pearl and viper, showing how treasures and threats share disguises. The boys copy verses onto silk squares. Layla subtly emphasizes vigilance, not paranoia. She leaves them chattering about pearl weights, confident the seed of caution is sown. Mid-afternoon brings Mary's pigeon return 2 notes. First, Galleon Santa Pala, Captain Alvis Quirini, loaded 12 cannon barrels manifests list, bronze statuary. Departure east in 5 nights. Second dockmaster bribed by masked broker accent, Genoese. Veneer of art covers artillery. Layla drafts a brief for the Sultan framing the intel as protection for the new Safavid Accord, not merely Venetian betrayal. She has learned palatable motives grease imperial wheels. But politics inside Topkapi swirls as unpredictably as the Golden Horn's eddies. Gulbahar's former coterie, leaderless and disgraced, seeks new gravity. Two of them, Yasemin and Nadira, approach Layla near the Lion Fountain, pledging loyalty if granted roles in her literary salon. She senses survival instinct masquerading as admiration. Yet alliances, like mosaics, gain strength from varied tesserae. "Bring me tonight," she replies, one verse on vigilance and one on mercy. Their eyes widen tasks, both humble and revealing. Twilight bleeds over minarets when Hassan summons Layla to the Sultan's private library. The ruler sits flanked by the Valid and Mary. On the low table gleams the Venetian tube. Layla kneels, presents the dock intelligence, and outlines a plan secretly detain the Santa Paula at Gallipoli for routine inspection, redirect her cannons to Imperial foundries, and publicly praise Venice for donating bronze for mosque bells, granting the Doge face-saving spin while gutting the rogue scheme. The Sultan chuckles a sound of granite grinding marble. Turning guns to bells, he muses the breeze whistles well. The Valid approves, instructing Hassan to mobilize the Capudan Pasha's fleet, yet complications bloom like night poppies. Intercepting the ship requires a ciphered order that must outrun the galleon. Layla volunteers to draft a high-velocity dispatch, concise coded bearing both her onyx ring seal and the Sultan's. Speedriders will gallop to Sanakhale before dawn. She writes in a tight diagonal script meant for quick eyes and burns the draft once Hassan memorizes it. Returning to her study near midnight, Layla finds Yasemin and Nadira waiting with parchment. Yasemin offers a vigilant verse comparing watchtowers to eyelids that never sleep. Nadira writes of mercy as the moon shedding light, yet ruling tides from afar. Layla praises both, assigns them to help copy educational manuscripts. Tiny victories anchor shaken spirits. Disgraced petals find new stems. Alone, she finally exhales. On the shelf, the clipped lute leans beside treaty scrolls, a silent duet of warning and ambition. She adds a fresh slip to her pillow archive. When bells ring from melted cannon, remember who tempered the clapper. Sleep drapes her lightly, but before dreams settle, distant hoofbeats echo speedriders already crossing aqueduct shadows. Point 9 ends with Layla half awake. Sensing cables of consequence stretch from her inkpot to Gallipoli's straits. From a Venetian quill to a Safavid handshake. Dawn will judge whether her dispatch reaches the Pasha in time, and Point 10 will open with cannon barrels hauled ashore under moonlight, or with bronze thunder rolling down the Dardanelles toward a treaty still warm with petals. Point 10 begins in the indigo hour before sunrise, when lanterns along the Sea of Marmara blur into wavering constellations, and every gull cry seems to ask whether Layla's night-inked dispatch has outraced the Venetian galleon. In her cedar study, the guardian of letters and breezes has dozed scarcely an hour. Now she sits upright as a eunuch's knock announces the return of Mary's pigeons. A breath, a click of parchment. Santa Paula anchored off Gallipoli under Imperial inspection. Bronze cargo impounded without resistance. Captain mutters of mistaken manifests. Relief sweeps Layla like cool bay wind, but it lasts only a heartbeat. Summons from the Sultan follows on the messenger's heels. She crosses courtyards where bakers slam dough on stone, and cats skirmish over fish heads, feeling the palace's pulse sink to her own quicker rhythm. In the Crimson Council chamber, the Sultan Valid Hassan and Grand Vizier Payal Pasha confer over a map of the Dardanelles. Cannon barrels smudged black on parchment now bear Layla's onyx seal annotation, redirected to foundry for bell casting. The Sultan looks up, eyes flint bright, yet almost playful. Galleons disarmed by quills again, the breeze outpaces gunpowder. The Vizier, less amused, warns that Venice will howl when news surfaces. Better to parade gratitude before their outrage gathers. The Valide agrees and instructs Layla to draft a proclamation praising Venice's generous bronze contribution to the new Sultan Ahmed Mosque. Subtext: disarm fury with flattery. Task accepted. Layla mentions another rising gale, the masked Genoese broker who bribed Galata's dockmaster. If a lone admiral could plot a rogue shipment, larger conspiracies might lurk. The Sultan grants her authority to coordinate with Capudan Pasha's harbor spies an unprecedented reach for a concubine. Vizier's eyebrow lifts, yet he says nothing. The Valide's faint nod nails dissent to the floor. Before departing, Layla requests access to the confiscated cannons. She wants to confirm barrel markings Venetian forges stamp cryptic lilies that differ minutely from state arsenals. The Sultan consents. Hassan assigns 2 guards and a litter for the cross-strait journey. Noon sees her skimming south across slate-green water in a painted kike mind, drafting the proclamation's skeleton. Let bells forged from transmuted thunder announce devotion, not dominion. She smiles at the alchemy lead stories into gold harmonies. Gallipoli's harbor bristles with masts like spears washed silver. In a cordoned warehouse stand, 12 dull brass barrels propped on timber cradles. Layla circles them methodically, 6 bare standard Venetian lilies. 5 show-blurred copies, counterfeits meant to implicate the Republic if discovered. The 12th is stranger still, etched with neither lily nor crescent, but a 4-petaled rose akin to Marco degli Argenti's private seal. Lightning of realization forks this shipment was double-edged frame. Venice feed Persia and smear Layla's own Venetian ally in one stroke. Only a mastermind with access to multiple courts could weave such knots. Genoese accent masked broker. Her pulse hammers a single name. Luciano Spinola, freelance intriguer expelled from Genoa for commerce beyond conscience. She pockets charcoal rubbings of the markings and heads for the fortress keep, where couriers await her return dispatch. On the ramparts, she writes 2 urgent notes, one to Capudan Pasha describing the counterfeit lilies and Spinola's rose, the other to Marco warning him his seal has been forged to ignite international blame. She marks both with the onyx ring and adds a lavender petal, her covert signature. Riders bolt down the peninsula road. Gulls wheel above like punctuation marks. Back at Topkapi by dusk, Layla finds the harem buzzing. Yasemin and Nadira, galvanized by their new duties, have organized a small salon where novices recite vigilance verses. The sight lifts her spirits. Gulbahar's vacuum is filling with healthier currents. Yet beneath the surface, she senses the usual undertow envy never sleeps. She joins briefly, praising a shy girl's metaphor about bells swallowing cannon roar, then climbs to her study to craft the proclamation's final flourish. Words must gild truth without exposing steel beneath, she writes of bronze gifted by friends across seas, purified in Ottoman furnaces that temper faith into resonance, leaving historians free to infer charity, while insiders catch the irony. Mehri arrives near midnight, bearing Cyprus-inked news. Spinola slipped out of Galata 2 nights prior on a grain felucca. Destination unknown, perhaps. Chios, perhaps Alexandria. Layla sighs. Storms scatter, then regroup. Mehri hands her a letter, too. Marco's swift reply snagged from a relay post. It thanks her for the warning, swears Venice authorized no such cargo, and vows that his own network will clip Spinola's wings. A postscript intrigues her. Beware roses with compass thorns. Some petals aim north, some bury south. Code for double agents at court. She locks the letter in her cedar chest beside the clipped lute. Next morning, the proclamation unfurls from the palace balconette on silk banners. Town criers echo it through Istanbul's bazaars. Mosques ring test taps on nascent bells cast from melted cannon scrap. Public jubilation overshadows whispers of scandal. The Doge sends a perfunctory note of appreciation, clearly baffled, yet grateful for face-saving narrative. The Valide congratulates Layla, gifting a slim jade inkwell engraved with twin tulips. The Sultan adds a single phrase: "Let the bells remind hearts that storms end in song." But celebration is cut short by new intelligence. Safavid scouts captured a Genoese trader near Tabriz, bearing letters from Spinola, promising fresh artillery if last cargo lost. Safavid viziers, suspecting duplicity, threaten to annul the Inkwet Treaty unless the port proves non-complicity. The Valide convenes a night council. Layla proposes dispatching Mirza Razi, an authenticated ledger of the seized barrels, complete with counterfeit lilies, to reveal Spinola's rogue scheme. Honesty, she argues, cements trust faster than scented flattery. The Sultan concurs. Pial Pasha objects, fearing exposure of Ottoman harbor laxity. Debate spirals until Layla invokes her own title. A breeze that dodges rocks still fills sails. Concealment breeds calms that sink fleets. Valide sides with her. The ledger will go. Preparing it consumes dawn. Layla oversees illustrators who sketch rose compass sigils, scrawl notes on alloy impurities, distinguishing real Venetian bronze from Genoese imitation. She stamps every page with her onyx ring and finishes with a verse. Forged thunder found no voice. May silence between empires resound instead. Noon courier leaves for Tabriz. Layla waves the dust from her fingers, aware the next echo acceptance or rupture will define her legacy. Exhausted, she drifts to the terrace where bells rehearse again, bronze throats learning humility. Gulbahar's lute remains silent in her study, yet Layla props it nearby and tests a new string. A low tentative chord hums. She adds another slip to her pillow archive. Bells and lutes share metal hearts, strike one, gently pluck the other. Firmly each sings peace when tempered. Point 10 ends with Layla gazing across the Bosphorus at ships small as brushstrokes, uncertain which carry grain, which carry guns, and which carry rumors disguised as roses. Night settles, scented with lavender and iron, as she prepares to meet whatever wins. Point 11 will usher perhaps Spinola's counterblow, perhaps the Safavid handshake, perhaps a council of bells tolling for intrigues yet unborn. Point 11 begins beneath a moonless velvet sky, where only the molten glow of Topkapa's foundry illumines the courtyard like a hidden sunrise. Bronze bells poured from the cannons Layla diverted are cooling in sand molds, their unborn voices locked in silence. She stands barefoot on warm flagstones, listening for a note that does not yet exist when Mary's footfalls break the hush. The Safavid courier has returned, Mary whispers, pressing a sealed leather pouch into Layla's hands. He seeks immediate audience alone. A midnight summons portends either an alliance cemented or catastrophe delivered. Layla wraps a shawl over her smoke-gray night robe and strides toward the cedar library pulse sinking to the blacksmith's fading hammers. Inside candlelight reveals Mirza Razi's senior scribe, Dariush. His travel cloak crusted with dust as red as Anatolian earth. He bows, producing 2 scrolls. The first bears a green silk ribbon official response from Tabriz. The second is plain sealed only by a thumbprint of rose-colored wax. Dariush's eyes linger on the latter with palpable dread. Layla breaks the green ribbon first. The Safavid viziers accept the ledger's proof of Genoese duplicity, applaud the Ottomans' honorable candor, and vow to honor all truce clauses. Relief gusts through her chest, treaty saved. Then she unseals the rosewax. It is a personal note from Mirza Razi, sparse yet chilling. Spinola captured near Ardabil. carries evidence of deeper plot-forged tulip seal orders implicating Ottoman court faction. Fate uncertain. Guards fear his tongue worth ransoms of kings. Advise swift counsel of bells. Layla inhales the parchment's metallic scent ink mixed with pomegranate tannin. Spinola alive means accusations may rebound onto the very heart of Topkapi if he bargains lies for freedom. She thanks Dariush, dispatches him to a guest wing, and hurries to the Valides' apartments, her bare feet whispering across Iznik tiles. The council assembles within the hour. Sultan Valid Grand Vizier, Piale, Kapodan Pasha Hassan, and Layla, still in nightrobe, her onyx ring glinting like a midnight star. She delivers Razi's twin scrolls emphasizing Spinola's forged tulip seal, designed to frame Imperial insiders. The vizier bristles, suspecting a Safavid ruse, but Kapudan Pasha remembers Spinola once courted disgruntled Janissary captains. The Sultan deliberates in heavy silence, then turns to Layla. Guardian of breezes, you untied this knot. You must now weave a cord strong enough to bind it. Translation travel to Ardabil, confront Spinola, secure his confession, or silence him before rumors outpace truth. Shock ripples through the chamber. Concubines do not ride to enemy lands. But the Valid supports the bold gambit. A woman envoy, cloaked in peace rhetoric, might pass borders quieter than an armored escort. Plans crystallize before dawn. Layla will accompany Dariush back to Persia, disguised as a scribe bearing draft protocols for bell exchanges, clever cover that explains her presence in foundries. 2 Janissary guards, fluent in Farsi and disguised as caravan merchants, will shadow her. Mary offers a final safeguard. The first completed bronze bell, no bigger than a melon, will travel with Layla as a gift of audible peace. Its clapper cast from Spinola's counterfeit rose-marked cannon, a poetic lure. 3 days later, Layla rides southeast in a dust-veiled caravan, the bell packed in cedar shavings, lavender sprigs tucked between scrolls. Nights glow with starfields so bright they burn away court ceilings from memory. Days ring with camel bells that sound like muffled hearts. At Tabriz's rose-brick gates, Safavid officials usher them beyond bustling bazaars to the governor's fortress, where Mirza Radzi greets Layla with tired gratitude. Spinola, he reveals, languishes in an underground cell, luring interrogators with half-truths draped in riddles. Layla descends spiral steps into stale torchlight. The Genoese intriguer sits chained, yet his smile flashes like a coin. Ah, the breeze herself, he croons. Did my rose find fertile soil? She ignores the taunt, places the small bronze bell on the table between them. Its surface gleams with faint tulip motifs, real not forged. She strikes it gently. A single clear tone hovers pure and uncompromised. Listen, Layla says quietly. That note began as your gun barrel. Now it sings instead of kills. Spinola laughs, then coughs travel grime, rattling his lungs. All metal wishes to be thunder, he rasps. You merely changed its weather. She leans in. And you wished to be the storm that shattered empires. That wish ends tonight. Negotiation unfurls like their earlier chess match. Layla offers him survival transfer to Venetian custody, a chance to plead for a private pardon if he signs a confession detailing every conspirator and clears Ottoman names. Spinola demands safe return of his Genoese estates. She counters with a modest stipend from Venice and anonymity in a quiet abbey. He scoffs, yet the chains clink, the only orchestra accompanying his ambitions now. Finally, she reveals her trump copies of forged tulip seals, already in the Sultan's hands. Should I leave empty-handed, she warns, those seals will recast you as a Venetian scapegoat, not a mastermind. Genoa, Venice, the port. They'll all hunt a patsy. Spinola's smile flickers. He asks for ink and parchment. By dawn, his confession spans 4 pages names of Janissary malcontents, Venetian smugglers, Safavid hardliners, all threads in a tapestry of war profiteering. He signs, presses his rose-scarred thumb beside signature and slumps. Layla orders a copy made for Razi, then seals the original with her onyx ring and lavender petal. Mirza Razi honors his word. Spinola is turned over to Venetian envoys in exchange for hefty reparations paid to both empires. Layla's caravan departs amid spring rains, leaving Tabriz smelling of wet dust and jasmine. Along the road, peasants gather when she rings the bell at village wells, letting its pure note chase away rumors of fresh conflict. One elderly woman kisses the bell's bronze rim, murmuring, "Peace tastes like sound today." Back in Constantinople weeks later, Topkapi welcomes Layla with fanfare usually reserved for victorious generals. The Sultan reads Spinola's confession aloud to the Divan, exonerating his court and condemning profiteers. Grand Vizier Piale publicly credits Layla's wind diplomacy, though his eyes hint at grudging respect. Bells melted from rogue guns are hoisted onto scaffoldings. Their inaugural peals echo across minarets, announcing Ramadan's first dawn. That night in her study, Layla shelves Spinola's confession beside the clipped ruby lute, 2 relics of storms diffused. Mary enters, carrying fresh parchment scented with hyacinth. The Valide requests a chronicle, she says, of how a concubine's breeze redrew 2 empires' maps. Layla smiles thoughtfully. A breeze, she replies, is only ink writing air. Maps redraw themselves when hands dare guide the quill. She dips pen into twilight blue ink and titles a new scroll, The Treaty of Bells and Breezes. Outside, bronze voices call the city to prayer, rolling over the Bosphorus like gentle thunder turned to melody. Point 11 ends with Layla writing under that harmonious chorus, mindful that every clear note owes its purity to fire furnace and the will to recast violence into resonance. Point 12 will open at the next solar eclipse celebration, where allies old and new gather, and a shadow over the sun hints at rival winds stirring far beyond the empire's borders. Point 12 begins under a day that forgets to be day at all. It is the morning of the long-foretold solar eclipse, and across Constantinople scholars, fishermen, and palace guards alike glance skyward, half terrified, half spellbound, by a sun already paling like a gold coin scraped thin. The court has declared a festival of heavenly wonder, inviting Safavid envoys, Venetian merchants, even a delegation from distant Muscovy to gather on Topkapi's marble terraces for a shared glimpse of cosmic shadow. Layla, now firmly woven into the empire's diplomatic fabric, has been asked to compose the ceremonial ode that will be read at the moment of totality. She rises hours before dawn, quill poised, yet the words resist. How do you celebrate darkness, swallowing light without inviting omens of calamity? Remembering the bells she midwifed from cannon metal, she writes, "When fire banks the forge, bronze becomes voice. When night swallows, day stars become compass." Satisfied, she seals the scroll with her onyx ring and tucks a sliver of lavender beneath the ribbon, her quiet hallmark. The palace bustles. Mary oversees cushions and astrolabes arranged on the southern parapet. Chief Eunuch Hassan drills pages in etiquette for foreign guests, and from somewhere in the harem, a tentative chord floats. Yasemin has restrung Gulbahar's once silenced lute, and now tests it, coaxing melody from an instrument that once strummed intrigue. Layla smiles at the resilience of both wood and women, yet messages ride in with the morning bread. A Muscovite falconer claims his birds refuse to settle, spooked by some unseen threat. A Venetian winemaster reports barrels tampered with salt. And most unsettling Safavid envoy, Mirza Razi, sends word that a windless hush grips his delegation, an omen his astrologers read as hostile magic. Minor notes, perhaps, but Layla has learned to hear rumors as reconnaissance. She pockets the reports and scans the festival roster. A single new name catches her eye: Leonora Spinola. Genoese philosopher, traveling with the Venetian party niece to Luciano Spinola, the conspirator she unmasked. Blood ties often carry unfinished business. Mid-morning, Layla meets the Valide and Grand Vizier Payale in the council loggia, where telescopes protrude like bronze lilies. Payale mutters about Muscovite complaints, worry creasing his brow. Layla quietly shares the suspicious incidents and suggests discreet inspections before guests converge. The vizier waves it off. Superstition stirred by an ordinary eclipse, while the Validi's gaze drifts to the veiled horizon. Shadow is a test of clarity, she murmurs, instructing Layla to proceed with calm. Hours pass. Sky dims as though a charcoal veil unrolls from the zenith. Trumpets announce the assembly. Delegates cluster along balustrades, Safavids in emerald Venetians, in sea-blue Muscovites, in sable Ottoman dignitaries, a crimson human cordon. Layla stands beside the Sultan scroll in handbells overhead, primed for a single clarion peal at totality's peak. A hush descends with the moon's encroaching arc. Birds drop from flight into silent roofs. Breezes coil inward. Layla begins her ode voice steady. When light slips its mooring and sails beneath horizon, let hearts ignite as lanterns ringing truth like bronze reborn. Her words float across the crowd just as the sun's final sickle vanishes, plunging the terrace into twilight noon. The bells strike a pure, thundering chord that vibrates bones. Stars glimmer. A collective gasp rises from throats of 3 empires in unison, and then chaos pricks the stillness. A Muscovite envoy staggers choking. A Venetian servant drops a tray wine, sloshing crimson across marble like spilled dusk. Layla's eyes dart, some faces show awe, others panic, but her gaze locks on Leonora Spinola, slipping toward a service stair cloak, flapping like a crow's wing. Layla signals Hassan. Both move. In half-shadowed corridors, lit only by eclipse gloom, they corner Leonora near the Bell Foundry Annex. Leonora's calm belies her flight. Curiosity, she claims to see the cannons turned bells, yet her cloak's inner lining bulges. Hassan confiscates 2 small clay flasks stoppered with wax and marked by a rose compass sigil, Spinola's mark. Gunpowder poison Layla sniffs vinegar and lime Greek fire precursor, enough to set the bell tower ablaze, framing Venice for arson during a celestial omen. Leonora's defiance crumbles under Hassan's grip. She confesses a half-baked vendetta, her uncle's capture and disgrace she insists deserve balancing. Venetian hardliners funded her mission. Sabotage the bells, blame Safavids, revive the war machine. Layla feels a cold thread tighten rival winds indeed, gusting across borders and bloodlines. Eclipse totality breaks. Sunlight flares like a blade unsheathed. On the terrace, cheers of relief ripple unaware of the catastrophe averted below. Layla orders Leonora detained and entrusts the flasks to palace alchemists. She hurries back, arriving as the Sultan entertains post-eclipse felicitations. Word travels quickly, Payale already frowning at rumors of a Genoese plot. Rather than humiliate Venice publicly, Layla whispers to Mary, who guides the Doge's emissary aside. A private confrontation yields swift apologies, promises of restitution, and a whispered pledge to extradite the Spinola family from Genoese shelters. That night, Topkapi hosts a twilight banquet bathed in lamps newly minted from cannon scrap. The bells still hum, resonant vibrations in their cooling towers, testament to vigilance. Layla, exhausted yet keenly aware of fresh scars on peace unveils. A surprise, she directs Yasemin's ensemble to perform The Rose of Shiraz. No longer Gulbahar's weapon, but now a hymn of reclamation. The music threads through arches, while diplomats dine on dates stuffed with pomegranate seeds, red but sweet. A metaphor she hopes will not be lost. At the banquet's close, the Sultan rises, holding aloft the first fully tuned bronze bell, no bigger than a child's head. Today, he declares we rang harmony over shadow. Let this bell travel each year to a different capital, Tehran, Venice, Moscow, as a reminder that darkness passes, but melody returns if hands are steady. He places the bell into Layla's custody, charging her to escort it on its inaugural journey to Tabriz. Later, under a balcony's dim lantern, Mary finds Layla tracing the bell's lip with thoughtful fingers. Another road, the elder whispers, half teasing, "Winds never let you rest." Layla smiles, weary but resolute. "Rest is for silence," she replies. "Breezes like bells must keep moving to stay alive." She writes a new couplet for her pillow archive. Eclipse births shadows. Vigilance forges echoes. Carry the echo until even night remembers light. As she seals it, the clipped ruby lute in the corner seems almost content. Its silence no longer ominous, but restful, as though it too trusts the bells to stand watch. Point 12 ends with Layla closing her eyes, hearing in the distance the gentle toll of bronze newly freed from war. Tomorrow, she will set sail eastward again, the traveling bell, cradled beside lavender, an emblem of delicately held peace. And beyond the horizon, fresh constellations of power glimmer, promising that the dance between shadow and sound is far from finished. Point 13 resumes 3 days after the eclipse, with Layla's kayik slicing eastward across the Sea of Marmara like a silver quill writing new lines on water. Velvet-lined in a cedar chest beside her rests the traveling bell, the very first cast from Spinola's confiscated cannon. Its bronze skin has been polished to a soft honey glow. Faint tulip arabesques catch daylight in flashes, and each roll of the hull seems to coax an inaudible hum from the silent clapper. 2 janissaries in merchant garb sit at the prow, joking in low farsi. Their presence is a reminder that peace still needs sentries. Behind them, Yasemin fingers Gulbahar's redeemed lute, summoned by Layla not for ceremony, but for morale music she believes is ballast for frail alliances. Morning mist thins as the boat reaches the Asian shore, where a relay of fresh horses waits. Layla mounts a dapple gray mare, the bell secured in a padded pannier. The caravan heads southeast toward the Sakarya River, hugging trade roads, stitched with caravanseries and mulberry orchards. Along the way, word of the Bell of Eclipse precedes them. At Bursa, silk merchants pause their haggling to touch the cedar chest for luck. At Eskishehir, dervishes spin an impromptu sama, chanting that bronze turned to voice turns, wrath to wisdom. Layla offers a quiet prayer that the myth grows faster than any rumor of sabotage. Yet diplomacy rarely travels a straight path. 2 days from Ankara, the caravan meets a column of battered soldiers, Ottoman irregulars retreating after a clash with Turkmen raiders. Their leader, Captain Kemal, recognizes the bell's escort seal and reports that the raiders struck with unnerving precision, targeting supply lines bound for Safavid border garrisons. Layla hears the unspoken suspicion someone wants the bell or the message it carries disrupted. She orders a dusk council inside an abandoned khan, poring over Captain Kemal's crude maps. The Janissaries recommend a detour across the Salt Lake Flats, longer, but devoid of ambush terrain. Yasemin murmurs that the flats at night sound like a giant lute wind humming across salt ridges. Layla smiles at the metaphor and chooses the safer route. The detour proves eerie. Under a lilac dusk, the salt lake stretches flat and white, as scraped parchment mirroring a sky smeared with rose. Hoofbeats crunch like distant drums, and each whisper reverberates in open silence. Yasemin plucks soft chords. The sound travels far, curling back on itself. Layla recalls her eclipse ode stars as compass and follows Orion's tilted belt east until black velvet sky folds to dawn. They rejoin the main road at Sivas, where Armenian traders gift them dried apricots to sweeten Persian tongues. The gesture reminds her how many invisible hands cradle fragile diplomacy. Beyond Sivas, the land sharpens into volcanic ridges. Snow still clings to Mount Ararat's distant crown, and winds taste of iron. In the frontier town of Dou-Bayazut, they encounter Mirza Razi's advance escort, 20 Safavid cavalry in emerald coats embroidered with silver pomegranates. Their captain Farhad Khan greets Layla with a courteous salam, yet his gaze lingers on the bell chest. Tehran's astrologers say the eclipse bell rings harmony, he muses. Raider chiefs say it rings subjugation. Truth rides which horse Layla answers that a bell has only one purpose to be heard. Motives belong to the hands that strike it. Farhad offers twin kettle drum guards and insists the caravan camp within his perimeter. Clearly, the Safavids too fear sabotage. Crossing the Aras River at dusk, Layla feels the bridge tremble under the combined weight of bell horse and expectation. The Janissaries ride rear eyes, scanning tree lines, while Yasemin hums a lullaby her mother once sang against nightmares. On the far bank, an abandoned mill creaks a spindle turning without grain. She notes the omen machinery waiting for purpose, like peace awaiting trust. At last, they crest a ridge, and Tabriz yawns below a mosaic of turquoise domes and bizarre roofs, shimmering in late afternoon sun. Trumpets announce their arrival. Crowds mass along saffron-dusted streets. Children wave willow branches, women throw rose petals, and muezzins pause mid-dawn to watch the column glide toward the Argi Tabriz citadel. The Safavid Shah, flanked by Mirza Razi and court poets, waits in a sun-striped courtyard. As Layla dismounts, Farhad lifts the cedar chest. Together, they place the bell on a marble pedestal draped in silks of both empires. The Shah strikes it lightly with a sandalwood mallet. A crystalline tone unfurls, soaring over rooftops, bending around minarets dissolving into mountain snow. Gasps ripple. The Shah smiles, declaring the sound as clear as Zoroaster's first flame. Layla bows relief-loosening muscles she didn't know were clenched. Festivities follow pomegranate wine saffron lamb poets, trading couplets on eclipse and concord. Yet amid the jubilation, Mirza Razi draws Layla aside to a jasmine arbor. His news chills the warm dusk. Muscovite envoys intercepted a message hinting at a secret clause promising Ottoman aid to Turkmen rebels, an obvious forgery, but already circulated among hardline Safavid generals who distrust the treaty. Layla realizes sabotage has found another venue, forged documents. Instead of forged seals, new shadows cast across their fragile light. That night, she convenes a tri-imperial huddle herself. Razi Venetian mediator Marco degli Argenti, summoned from Isfahan, and Farhad Khan, whose loyalty to peace outweighs his war credentials. Over maps and candles, they dissect handwriting strains, ink provenance, and courier routes. Uncovering a pattern, each forgery bears microscopic salt crystals, the same salt used to tamper Venetian wine during the eclipse. Leonora Spinola's network survives her arrest. Someone in Trebizond's salt guild smuggles treated parchment eastward, seeding discord like granules. Layla proposes a counterstroke: expose the forgeries publicly at the next day's poetry contest, where scribes from 3 empires will display calligraphic masterpieces. She will present a scroll analyzing the fake document's chemical composition then challenge any rival scribe to reproduce the salt ink signature under scrutiny. An impossible task, revealing the forgery by its unique impurity. Razi agrees. Marco offers Venetian alchemists to confirm the test. Farhad arranges discreet security stationing archers among mulberry pergolas. Morning dawns with almond blossoms drifting over the courtyard like pink parchment scraps. The contest begins. Elegant quills scratch metaphors about eclipses and bells. When Layla's turn arrives, she unfurls 2 scrolls, one authentic treaty clause, one forged rebel pledge. Under magnifying crystals, salt glitters like glass sand. Gasps swirl. She recites a new verse. Grains meant for bread may poison ink. Sift both, and truth will rise like yeast. A murmur of assent rolls through scholars. Hardliners begrudgingly nod. The smear evaporates before it stains. That evening, under lanterns strung like captive stars, Shah and Safavid generals pledge to carve the rumor's author from their ranks. They toast Lady Windmaker of Constantinople, the first Ottoman diplomat granted honorary membership in the Royal Academy of Poets. Layla accepts knowing titles are feathers beautiful light and prone to drift. She finds Yasemin tuning the lute near a fountain and asks for the Rose of Shiraz. Notes ripple-blending Persian melody with Ottoman cadence, the harmony she has chased since stepping beyond Topkapa's marble lions. Later, in her guest chamber overlooking tiled domes, Layla writes a line for the Pillow Archive. Peace is not a bell, but the silence after its echo, measured by how long hearts keep beating in unison. She places the lavender sprig beside it, then falls asleep to distant hoofbeats. Messengers galloping north with news that for now, darkness has been folded back into history's parchment. Point 13 closes on that fragile exhale, aware that tomorrow she must escort the bell onward to Venice, where Adriatic winds gather their own rumors, and where bronze once again may be asked to choose between voice and thunder. Point 14 begins on a pre-dawn quay at Trabzon, where the Black Sea roars like a smith's hearth, and gulls flicker above yardarms like restless commas. Layla's mission has pivoted westward. The bell of eclipse must next cross to Venice, the Republic, where rose salt forgeries were born, and where true contrition must now ring in bronze. She stands beside a high-prowed Venetian galley, its lateen sails furled against violet wind, while dockhands load silk bales, cedar chests, and one velvet-swaddled bell whose single note has already quieted 2 empires' war drums. Yasemin adjusts the lute slung at her back, eyes wide with anticipation rather than fear. Even after weeks on dusty caravan tracks, she has never tasted sea spray this bracing. 2 janissaries, Karam and Baha, inspect the mooring lines, trusting neither rope nor republic. Farhad Khan, released from Safavid duties, has volunteered to escort them as far as Corfu. He claims curiosity about Western ballads, but Layla knows he also wants to ensure Persia's trust rides safely through pirate alleys. She welcomes the extra sword. Captain Pietro Valenti greets them with courtly flourish, though his crew casts side-eye at janissary scimitars. "Our hold is yours," he declares in rippling Ottoman, "and our compass points only toward concord." Layla bows, mindful that a compass can still spin under hidden magnets. Before dawn, fully hatches the galley cuts from harbor oars, churning obsidian water sails, billowing with that first tentative inhale of northerly breeze, the same Black Sea wind that once carved ambition into a concubine's heart. Days blur into maritime ritual dawn prayers beneath pinkening skies, breakfast of dried figs and goat cheese. Midday Persian chess on the quarterdeck sunset. Readings from Marco degli Argenti's notebooks on Adriatic diplomacy. At night, Yasemin's lute floats minor Hijaz phrases over creaking masts, each note plucked to soothe sailors who mutter about Cyclades corsairs and plague islands. Layla spends hours in the captain's chart room, matching coastal silhouettes to Marco's coded merchant routes, hunting for any shoals where treachery might anchor. Trouble sails in on the 6th dusk, as amber light slants through rigging. A lateen rig brigantine, under no flag, appears off starboard, tacking in perfect cadence with Valenti's course. The captain's jaw tightens. Pirate galleys seldom show colors until blood answers wood. Karam notes oddities. The pursuer's deck lacks cannon unusual for sea raiders, yet masts glitter with telescopes and signaling lanterns. Not plunderers, Layla thinks, but watchers. Farhad trains a spyglass. Crewmen wear dark hoods, insignia inked with a rose compass sigil. Spinola loyalty still floats. That night, Layla devises a countercurrent. If the brigantine wants the bell, let it chase an echo, not the bronze itself. She asks Valenti for a spare jolly boat, loads it with a decoy crate filled with scrap bronze and cedar shavings scented with lavender oil, then orders crew to lash a faint lantern inside, enough to glow like precious cargo under moonlight. At midnight, the galley feigns a rudder malfunction, dropping speed near a lee shore riddled with rocky teeth. Under cover of shouted repairs, Karam and Baha row the jolly boat down a shadowed inlet, release it on a tidal rift, and slip back unseen. Dawn reveals empty horizon. The brigantine fled overnight, likely netting the decoy, and believing victory tasted of lavender and metal. Valenti laughs until tears salt his beard. Layla merely exhales, knowing a hunter fooled is seldom a hunter gone. She pens a quick verse for the pillow archive. Let rumor haul the bait. Let truth sail free. The Adriatic greets them with glassy serenity. Off Corfu, Farhad disembarks, gifting Layla a rolled carpet woven with twin tulips and pomegranates, symbol, he says, of two empires threading one loom. When bells toll in Venice, he advises listen for echoes, counting coins as well as heartbeats. She promises vigilance, watches his emerald cloak diminish against olive terraces, then turns north toward the Doge's lagoon. Venice rises, one mist-pearled dawn, palazzi facades shimmering like wet manuscripts. Gulls wheel over Santa Maria della Salute. Salt-laden breezes tangle Yasmin's hair as gondoliers hail the foreign galley with polyglot cheer. Custom skiffs approach, but when Captain Valenti brandishes the Sultan's chrysobull and Safavid scrolls, oar-strokes still to reverent silence. News of the eclipse bell has traveled faster than Spinola's sabotage ever could. Marco degli Argenti awaits at the Fondaco dei Turchi, silver-caped eyes alight with relief. Our republic strains under shadow. He confesses, ushering the party into a courtyard perfumed by lemon trees. Some senators whisper of Ottoman overreach, others of Persian deceit. Your bell must toll clarity before fear tolls war. The Doge has prepared a public ceremony. The bronze will peal from St. Mark's Campanile at dusk, witnessed by envoys of every maritime state. Layla nods. Grand theater can cauterize rumor, but only if backstage ropes hold. She insists on inspecting the belfry herself. Climbing narrow spiral stairs, she notes every carpenter's wedge, each rope splice. The bell, hoisted hours earlier by pulley, now hangs gilt in sunlight, filtering through lancet windows. She tests it. One light tap with a padded mallet releases a tone so luminous that pigeons scatter from the piazza below. Next, she checks the clapper's hinge secure. Yet in the shadowed timber yoke, she finds a smear of resin laced with salt crystals, the same sabotage signature. Someone planned to muffle resonance, making Ottoman bronze seem inferior. Layla scrapes the resin away, seals a sample vial for evidence, and stations Baha as silent sentry until ceremony. Returning to Marco's quarters, she shares her discovery. He curses names 3 senators hired by Genoese factions and hurries to petition the Doge for guard patrols. Meanwhile, Yasemin and Kerem set up a small stage in the piazzetta, rehearsing Rose of Shiraz, but weaving Venetian folk refrain into its cadence, a musical handshake. Dusk cloaks Lagoon and Basilica in rose gold. Crowds thick as spilled lentils fill St. Mark's Square spice merchants from Damascus wool factors, from Flanders Muscovite traders. In fur, even a handful of wary Portuguese captains. Layla stands beside the Doge on a balcony draped with silk-bearing tulip lion and winged lion emblems, Ottoman Safavid Venetian entwined. The Doge raises a hand, and Yasemin's ensemble strikes its hybrid melody oud and lute entwined with mandolin. Rhythm of caravan hoofbeats meets Adriatic rowlocks. A hush follows the final chord. Layla steps forward, delivering her Ode of Eclipse in fluent Italian, describing how shadow taught 3 empires to forge light in bronze. She ends with a challenge. Let this bell remind every harbor that thunder once smelted into song must never again be recast into fear. At her signal, Baha releases the rope. The clapper swings. A note unfurls pure argent, orbiting marble and water alike. Windows tremble, gondolas sway. Distant bells answer like younger siblings. The crowd erupts in applause. Senators exchange awed glances. Even skeptical merchants clutch chest crosses or prayer beads. Resonance has done what edicts might fail. Later in the Doge's banquet hall overflowed with candied citron and saffron cod. Marco presents Layla with a rare Murano glass ink pot, swirling turquoise and copper, the Adriatic captured in crystal. The Doge himself clasps her hands, pledging a maritime patrol treaty that binds Venice Ottoman and Safavid ships against shared piracy. In a corner, senators who once bankrolled Spinola stare at the floor, salt resin plot, dissolved like sugar in wine. Near midnight on the terrace overlooking moon-spangled canals, Yasemin strums a lullaby, while gondoliers hum. Layla writes a fresh entry for the Pillow Archive. When bells teach water to sing, even stone listens. She glances toward St. Mark's Campanile, where her bell gleams under starlight, confident but never complacent. Winds may calm, yet tides forever move. Point 14 ends with Layla breathing briny night air, aware that tomorrow letters must sail to Constantinople, Tabriz, and Moscow, reporting success, but also warning that shadows need only one harbor to regrow. Beyond the lagoon, the Ligurian Sea waits, and rumor already whispers of a Spanish duke bent on exploiting Balkan rifts. The breeze has new coasts to chart, and Point 15 will follow Layla as she weighs whether to chase the next storm, or finally let another windkeeper raise the quill. Point 15 opens just before dawn, the Venetian fog still pearl gray, when Layla unbolts the shutters of her guest suite above the Grand Canal. Bells from San Giorgio echo last night's triumphant peal, yet she tastes new tension in the air, the way a seasoned sailor feels storm pressure settle behind clear skies. On her desk sits Marco's Murano glass ink pot, swirling turquoise and copper like captive tides, beside 4 sealed packets dispatches for Constantinople, Tabriz, Moscow, and unexpected Madrid. The last bears no sender, only a crimson wax crest of twin griffins, the house of Don Ramon de Valdez, younger cousin to Spain's powerful Duke of Alba, and reputed architect of Balkan intrigues. She breaks the seal. Inside, neat Castilian strokes invite the mistress of bells to parley aboard the Duke's flagship Santa Catalina, anchored near Zara on the Dalmatian coast. Don Ramon offers a proposal to harmonize Iberian steel with Ottoman bronze phrasing as polished and dangerous as a Toledo blade. Rumors Marco whispered last night a Spanish plan to exploit fractures among Balkan beyliks suddenly sharpen into deliberate outreach. Layla's pulse steadies. Invitations can be snares or keys, depending on who chooses the doorframe. By midday, she meets Marco and Captain Valenti under the colonnades of the Doge's palace. Venetian gulls circle overhead, squabbling like senators. Marco's smile thins when he sees the griffin seal. Spain smells profit in fractured coasts, he mutters. If the Duke courts you, he gambles you can mute Ottoman bells before they rouse Adriatic alliances. Valenti volunteers his galley for any journey east, but Layla senses the necessity of subtler sails. She decides on a smaller sandalo rigged for speed, crewed by Kerem Baha and Yasemin, whose loot she insists is diplomacy's soft scabbard. Farhad has already returned to Persia. This mission tests Ottoman resolve alone. That night, she writes to the Sultan brief-coded outlining Spain's overture and her intent to engage, not capitulate. Across separate parchment, she drafts orders empowering Mehri and the Valid to dispatch a secondary envoy should her bell fall silent by the next full moon. Into her pillow archive, she slips a new aphorism: a door may open onto a throne room or a pit. Enter with one foot anchored in each. She sleeps uneasily, lulled by canal water, slapping stone like a distant metronome. 3 days later, the Sandolo glides down the Adriatic, hugging ragged limestone coasts, splashed with sea lavender. Yasemin practices a newly woven piece that stitches Ottoman maqam to Basque folk modes music as anticipatory treaty. At Rovinj, partisan fishermen warn them of Spanish corsairs prowling farther south. At Pula, a Franciscan monk blesses their voyage with salt and rosemary. Layla keeps the Murano inkpot, close its swirling hues, reminding her that every negotiation is equal parts translucence and sediment. Zara rises at sunrise fortress walls, honey gold Spanish banners snapping crimson above gun ports. Santa Catalina rides the harbor like a crouched jaguar, black hull, gilded figurehead of St. Catherine brandishing a wheel. Don Ramon's launch ferries Layla aboard, where mahogany decks gleam, and sailors avert eyes in scripted deference. The Spaniard greets her in polished, Turkish kissing air above her knuckles. His doublet smells of clove and ambition. In the great cabin maps of Dalmatia, Albania, and Morea unfurl beneath crystal goblets of vino secco. Ramirez offers a blunt thesis: Spain will bankroll coastal fortifications for independent Balkan lords in exchange for naval bases, buffer states insulating both empires from Venetian meddling. Layla recognizes the play fracture to conquer, then lease unity back at interest. She counters with the Bell's story cannons transmuted to resonance and proposes a tri-empire maritime college where Spanish gunnery, Ottoman cartography, and Safavid astronomy teach sailors to read waves instead of war. Don Ramon laughs softly, impressed yet unconvinced. Negotiations stretch into evening sentences measured like saber feints. Yasemin, waiting in an adjacent saloon, lets lute chords drift through latticed doors. The melody, half Hijaz, half Basque, slips beneath conversation, disarming. Don Ramon pauses, palms the air, as if catching the tune. Your minstrel plays homeland echoes, he admits. Layla seizes the moment, reminding him Spain once forged convivencia among 3 faiths. Why not resurrect that polyphony on the Adriatic? She slides forward, the Murano inkpot glass, born of Venetian fire, colored by Anatolian copper-proof discord, may fuse into translucence. He studies the swirl, sees in it perhaps his own reflection tempered by possibility. Finally, he proposes a test, a joint expedition mapping uncharted shoals off Ragusa using Spanish lead lines and Ottoman star tables. Success would preface larger accords. Layla agrees on 2 conditions. The bell of eclipse will chime aboard the lead ship at each night watch change, audible assurance of shared command, and all data will be copied thrice, one for each empire's academy. Don Ramon extends a gloved hand. Shake seals the pact. Storm clouds bruise the horizon as Santa Catalina sails with Layla still on board expedition immediate to preempt interference. Karam navigates by crescent moon. Spanish pilots plot wind arcs on vellum. At midnight, the bell tolls its bronze note-threading rigging like silver rope. Sailors swap watch with respectful hush superstitions quelled by sound's clarity. Mid-voyage tragedy nearly torpedoes trust. A hidden reef gashes the Spanish supply bark. Water floods hold. Charts drift like wounded gulls. Ottoman crew swing into action. Karam's men form bucket chains, Baja patches, hull with pitch-soaked canvas. Yasemin steadies minds with rallying cadence on deckside drum. Ramirez witnesses cooperation forging in crisis. When dawn reveals the bark afloat if wounded, he clasps Layla's shoulders. The bell kept rhythm. Your men kept promise. Ragusa's harbor embraces them 2 days later under storm-cleansed skies. Cartographers consolidate findings confirming 3 new safe channels that will shave weeks off pilgrim routes to Jerusalem. The joint log, signed in Turkish, Spanish, and Persian, praises Bell Protocol cohesion. Layla pens the addendum, where once cannons roared, bells now steer. Ramirez seals it with griffin wax, but this time entwines a tulip between claws, visual admission of shared custody. Back aboard Santa Catalina, he presents Layla a slender case inside a quill carved from Andujar olive wood tip dipped in Toledo steel. May your future letters cleave falsehood as keenly, he says. She gifts him Yasemin's hybrid score, annotated in both musical notations instructing him to teach Spanish choirs. They part under gull-stitched skies, aware their accord is fragile yet real. Layla's sandalo heads north toward Venice bells, gleaming from the masthead like captured suns. She drafts letters to the Sultan, recounting Spanish pivot. To Mirza Razi, inviting Safavid astronomers to the Maritime College. To Mary, requesting grooming of new scribes so the breeze may one day rest. In her pillow archive, she writes, "Peace is a map redrawn by each tide. Chart often sail humbly." Point 15 ends as Adriatic twilight paints ripples copper, and Layla glimpses in the bell's reflection not just her own face, but a constellation of allies Venetian, Persian, Spanish, flickering like lighthouse beams. Ahead, whispers speak of Portuguese ambitions beyond Gibraltar. Yet tonight, she allows the wind to cradle unheard futures, while the bell of eclipse tolls once across tranquil water, sounding both homecoming and horizon. And that, travelers, is where we leave Layla, her bronze bell echoing across calm seas, while new horizons glimmer just beyond the mast. If this story reminded you that even the heaviest thunder can be recast into harmony, let that note linger long after the video ends. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment telling me which moment of Layla's journey resonated with you most, and what modern canon you'd transform into a bell of peace. Your ideas might inspire the next voyage. Until then, thanks for watching, and may every breeze carry you toward brighter shores.